À 300 000, on adjuge. À 71 000. À 300 000, on adjuge. À 71 000. À 300 000, on adjuge. À 71 000. À 300 000, on adjuge. À 300 000, on adjure. À 71 000. 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 À 300 000, on adjure. adjure. À 71 000, à 300 000, on 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 adjure.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are around the world. Lovely to have your company. It's the Le Mans Classic for 2023. Normally every 2 years, but we've slipped an extra one in for you for the centenary celebrations of the world's greatest motor race. And we're grabbing a little bit of time back at the moment, some demonstration and some hot laps out on the circuit as we head into our afternoon session. We're not too far away from the parade, the winners' parade, and that means that we'll see somewhere near or perhaps even over 60 actual cars that have won this phenomenal race. Good afternoon from the Circuit de la Sarthe and from our live coverage. RS1 for the audio if you're travelling around via radiolemans.com, and of course we're on YouTube and various other places there, all listed on radiolemans.com if you go to the page. No breaks, no blocks, and we're going through the afternoon session, and we have got an additional evening session for you. For this part of the broadcast, it's Peter Snowden and me, John Hindhaugh, in the global broadcast booth, and on the grid, just beginning to be assembled, Mr. Snowden, is mouth-watering Le Mans winning goodness. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, John. Mouth-watering, absolutely right. Maths is never my strong point at school, but you just mentioned there 60 of the cars that have won Le Mans.
Yeah.
Now, with a centenary year, but it's only 90 runnings of it.
91
91
at the weekend.
91
Yeah.
at the weekend, just gone. Accidentally missing one 3 weeks ago, okay? So that's
Which you were here
because
for.
I was here for, I know, but it's there and back again, you know what it's like. So that's 2/3 of the cars that have won this race.
Potentially could have won, yeah.
Have won this over here on the grid. That, I mean, if that's not the very definition of mouth-watering, I don't know what is.
And the fact that they've been able to find some of the lesser-known cars is quite extraordinary. If they've all been exhibited for the past month or so in the museum, which is near to the main gate here. Cadillac sitting on the grid, the very interesting streamliner.
The Monster.
The Il Monster. The exhibition runs, I believe, till the end of July and is absolutely worth looking at. The museum is always worth a little run round, but at the moment, with all of the celebrations of the 100th anniversary, you've got to say it's a must-do if you're anywhere near this part of France and driving by. Whether there is an event on here or not, then for a few euros, whatever it is, to get in at the Le Mans 24 hours, you could get in with your race ticket. And it was, I mean, we sent Krillsy up there, our Australian commentator, and he was absolutely blown away by it.
Not only that, they've got, talking models of cars, but we've got model cars as well. There's a collection within there of all the cars that have taken part in Le Mans over the years. I think that's great. Now, just think about that, 91 running, how many cars a time, and there's a model of each car that's taken part.
Yes.
That is quite extraordinary.
That's a lot of wall space.
I was going to say, it's a lot of dusting, isn't it?
So Il Monster sitting on the grid. We are hoping for a couple of laps here. I'm not sure what our rain delay will have done to the timings this afternoon. And we've still got a couple of fast laps to do as well, Peter. At the front of the field, a very lovely Mercedes with the side opening, the gull wing doors. This one going way back into the history of the Le Mans 24. Jaguars have had a spirited run here, Pete, down through the years.
Yeah, back in the 50s, that was a car to beat at the time with the Jaguar D-Type. Of course, the C-Type was the first car to run disc brakes here at Le Mans, debuted them. And cars we were talking earlier, John, about some of the Audi stuff and TFSI, etc., and all the different technologies that come down trickle down onto the road car. Well, we accept radial tyres and disc brakes as a given, and carbon ceramic brakes, and we can go all sorts of worlds on that. But disc brakes were used in, I think it was 1953 for the first time on a Jaguar C-Type, the car before the D-Type.
Yes.
But they were trialled here, and racing improves the breed, and that's the whole point. And it improves the road car, and that's why the manufacturers get involved.
The disc brake came from aircraft, of course. Yeah. Andrew Marriott joining us this afternoon. Andrew's brought the sunshine along with us and won the Reims 12 hours in 52, 12 hours and 52, but really the disc brake came to prominence here in 1953, as Snoy's mentioned there.
Absolutely, and developed not by a brake manufacturer, but by a tyre manufacturer, by Dunlop, because also used to make wheels at the time.
On those Jaguars, weren't they?
Absolutely.
The Dunlop safety wheel.
Yes, exactly, yeah, knock on.
And has transformed the way we slow our cars down, really. They use them on TGVs and everything. One of my bugbears is people say, oh, we've gone to carbon brakes, we used to be on steel brakes. No brakes are made of steel, they're made of cast iron.
Yeah.
Because in my very early days, I was a foundry engineer, and I know the difference between cast iron. It's all to
incontestable.
It's all to do with the carbon content, but we won't bore you with that.
I mean, Ferrari road cars now haven't had a steel brake since 2009. Cast iron.
The only non-piston engine winner of Le Mans is the 787B, and that was the quad rotary engine with a sound like no other. There have been some very specific sounds here at Le Mans down through the years, but that rotary engine, if you were here in 1991 or 92 when they were running around, you will never forget it.
You will not. Absolutely fantastic, and a different sound as well. I mean, we really enjoyed the scream of the V12 or the V10 Judd this morning.
Yes. Winning
a race, but it is nothing like that. I mean, and the closest thing to it, in pure joy of audio, if you will. There's a car we just saw going through our picture moments before, Matra V12. They also sounded brilliant.
Yeah, just notice, I think the one car that's reluctant to get away at the moment, got a little yellow flag next to it, is the Turbine BRM, Rover BRM by the look of it.
I talked to Jackie Stewart about that. He says the most horrible racing car I've ever driven and probably the slowest.
Well, your issue there is you don't get any engine braking, do you? So everything had to be done with the brakes.
And of course,
brakes early on.
We will have the helmet racing this weekend, which is and they got the concept from that Rover BRM car.
It was a car he shared with Graham Hill, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1965.
Yeah. It was on display at Goodwood the other day, but not a great. Well, it was a good idea, wasn't it?
When we have an appropriate moment, I'll tell you about my conversation with Jackie Stewart at Goodwood, and I was comparing an event, end of 2021 actually, and it was fascinating watching the driver in a man that was still 82 years old at that point then.
Oh, he's still smooth as silk, isn't he? Right, let's go through some of these cars in the sunshine with an extraordinary crowd. Yesterday, in fact, Thursday, Friday, and today, Saturday, we kick off this afternoon session with the parade of winning cars. Now, we're not going to see them all driven particularly spiritedly, and some of these cars are road-going variants, I believe, of the cars that have won. So let's go through some of them.
Well, Birdcage Maserati there.
That's the white number 24 with a blue stripe going through Turk Rouge. Called a birdcage because?
Well, the tiny tubes. The chassis is made out of tiny tubes. And I went and looked at it yesterday again. Even under the cockpit, just in front of the steering wheel, you can see this massive little tiny tubes. I don't see how it worked, really.
Well, that was part of it. It had a massive
they did.
Perspex windscreen, and you could see into the cockpit.
Exactly, that's right, And there was a rear-engine version a bit later that didn't work so well.
Raced famously in the 1970s by Sir Honourable Patrick Lindsay.
Yes, indeed. And Sterling Moss raced a Birdcage Maserati. Well, here they are, look, going out onto the Mulsanne Straight. They no longer paint white on the trees as they used to.
They're a little bit further back now because of the tragedy that we had a few years ago. So they're out in the sunshine. We were hoping for some decent weather for this. One or two more passengers than would have been held in the cars in period. Although, of course, let's not forget, we did start here with ride-on mechanics.
Yes.
And
for years with the first 20 laps, was it, with the hood up?
You had to do some with the hood up, and you couldn't add fluids between 5 and 10 laps.
On our screen, we're just seeing the Bentley. I did have a quick word with Sean Lynn, asked him about what the problem was in the race. He was pretty peeved because before the start of the race, he was sure it was going to rain, so he put rain tyres on.
Yeah.
Because everybody else on slicks to held the race up for an hour. And then he said so basically decided not to race the car. He decided it was too dangerous to race the car.
So at the front of the field, some of the more modern cars being photographed. The hippie Porsche going through, the number 3 car with the green and blue.
That is a genuine car. They took it to pieces at one stage and separated the body and the chassis and the engine, and then Vasek Polak in California put it all back together. But it is an absolute genuine hippie car, although there was more than one hippie car, because when it went to the next race in Watkins Glen, it got painted in shell colours, and then it went back to the hippie colours. Love the matches, though. It's
a philosophical discussion, isn't it, about cars? And we were talking about this on the way down as we were driving down in our very modern 3.3 litre straight 6 diesel from Mazda, their newest engine. We've got their rotary engine here. Their newest engine is a 3.3 straight 6 diesel, and we've got well over 52 miles to gallon on the way down. About where do you put the cars in their history? Because so many of these cars went through so many different hands. I suppose it's easy when you've got the Chatan's Matra that's sitting at that number 7 car that's going through the first, or the Tête Rouge now.
And who's at the wheel of that?
Henri Pescarolo. Yeah. The Grand Pesca. Also a brilliant helicopter pilot. You know,
I did not know.
No, I didn't know
Took
that.
part in helicopter competitions very successfully.
Now, we mentioned Graham Hill. Of course, he shared with Henri Pescarolo.
Yeah, to the victory.
To the victory, but at the time, Pescarolo didn't want him.
Definitely
because
didn't.
He'd ended his F1 career, he'd had that massive accident at Watkins Glen and broken his legs, and never really been the same stint, but was still carrying on in Grand Prix. And Pescarolo did not want him, openly said, I did not want a sprint Grand Prix driver who he felt was at the end of his career anyway. And apparently, Pescarolo said he was absolutely stunned at Hill's ability and the way he adapted to the car and the race. And of course went on to win it. A small matter.
The 16 is the Rondo.
That won.
Yes.
In the newspaper sponsorship.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
And the Matras has come to a grinding halt. Matra, Simca, as they were branded. Simca part of the Matra and Simca part of the conglomeration that became Peugeot and Talbot.
Strange enough, most of those Matras have been refurbished and rebuilt in the UK by Hall and Hall.
Okay, Rob Hall, yes. Yeah. Good peddler.
Here's if you can see it on
Il Monstre.
Le Monstre. That is David Drinkwater's
Le Monstre.
reproduction.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's like they're in the two main. I think they only built three. Two of them in the Collier Museum in Naples, Florida.
Ferrari number 20 is just gorgeous. Now, look, around the circuit, you're here, you're listening to us. As it goes by you, tell me the rear three-quarters of that doesn't look like a 296. The new 296. That's all I can see.
I think it's the other way around. 296 looks like the rear of that.
Well, yes, exactly. But you know what I mean. You know, it was as soon as I saw the 296.
Well, it is very much so. I was actually, as I mentioned about being on this Passioni event last year, and they were saying that not last weekend, sorry. And they were saying that these lights on the Roma, the road car, is meant to be an evocation of the sports races of the 60s, because that's the history. It's the eye line, it's the hook.
Got the fat Porsche going through. Interesting history on that car, the open-topped TWR Porsche that won in '96 and '97. The WSC '95 didn't start life in that shape.
No, it didn't. Or with that name even.
No. It is. We got the first overall win for Porsche there, the 1970 winner with the number 23, made famous by the Steve McQueen movie Le Mans. But the open-topped TWR, the Porsche WSC, didn't even start open-topped, did it?
No, it didn't. It had a roof on it. Yeah.
And it was I'm right in saying it was a Jaguar.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a Jaguar to start with.
It's the only chassis that's raced Le Mans twice. There's two different makes.
Yeah.
And styles.
So,
it's quite impressive, isn't it?
Very clever Tom Walkinshaw, eh?
If he sweated the asset, I think it was fair.
Oh, I like that expression.
On that. He made the most out of it. Some of the older cars, of course, very difficult to get those cars running, and when you consider that some of the older cars were running around here with drum brakes on the back only in the early years, and it was 30-odd miles and all gravel. Heartily recommend for you Richard Williams' book on the 100 years of Le Mans. I'm about three-quarters of the way through it. I'm taking it very steady. I'm not speed reading that one. Very good. Not just about... It is not just a catalogue of the races. What I love about it is it talks about the individuals and the stories, and it puts the race in context with the events of the time that were going on around the world. Because a lot of people...
Yeah, context.
Richard's so good at that. His Richard Seaman book is the same.
Oh, yes,
fantastic
absolutely.
read.
Absolutely. And this, of course, there was several battles here down through the years at Le Mans in various different conflicts, and played a big part in World War II here, in various parts of World War II, and so many drivers who'd been here before the war, particularly the French, went on to fight for the Allies in the Resistance.
Just saying that, sort of the '99 winner, the BMW, going through, built by Williams.
Correct.
Were designed by Graham Humphreys. That was their second attempt at
There was a V8 car before they went to the V12,
yeah.
and the V8 car was actually really successful in the States.
Yeah.
And the first time I went to the States in '98, I went to what didn't know at the time, the final two, what were the final 2 World Sports Car Championship events, one at Homestead and the other one at what is now WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, and saw the V8 running there rather successfully.
People often say to me, what's when you say sports car racing, a term we use all the time when we're in the industry, opposed to Formula One, is it's a 2-seater. In principle, it should be. Yeah. And there's that great book, isn't it, Time and 2 Seats?
Yeah.
Where it should be a 2-seater. You should be able to, as we said about the hoods up on the car and carry a riding mechanic and a spare wheel and all that kind of thing. But just watching I think it's the 1978 winner there, or application of the Renault that won. It's got a passenger in it.
Yeah.
Just proving it is a 2-seat car. You can still do it, and it should be able to carry 2. It's fantastic. Never mind the older ones, but some of them have got 2 passengers in. I think some of the Alfa Romeos at the back in the 20s are absolutely glorious. I think there's Rob Kaufman who's racing here this weekend. He's got not 1 but 2 of the Le Mans winning cars.
He has, yeah.
Original car. He's got the Alfa from the 1920s and the 1966 GT40.
Are we going to see him racing in quite soon, I think?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
He certainly raced it last year, didn't he?
No, he's just racing again this year.
Yeah. So,
now we can see the Renault there with 2 people. Clearly quite comfortable in that car.
I think you may exaggerate a tiny bit.
I said quite.
Quite.
Not in the American quite, but the British quite.
Just going back to that.
It's all relative. It's all relative.
The Bentley, 3rd year. They took the victory that they had planned so carefully.
Yeah.
They always said it was a 3-year programme, and exactly the case for those guys. They won the podium the year before when they came on in the old white racing suits and the driving helmet, and in 2003 they won the race itself.
Unkindly referred to as a green Audi at the time, and it was actually. I'd like to explode that myth. It's not. There was absolutely there was a commonality in terms of the company and the ownership and whatever, but it was an entirely separate program.
Yeah,
and it's not an R8 Audi underneath with a green body.
No, but it was an R8 engine.
Not the same capacity though.
No, but still.
Still in the engine.
Bartelski had a lot to do.
Baretsky, yes, had a lot, but they had to do a lot of work on that car because of the fact they ran the narrower rear tyres as per the regulations.
250 GTO.
Beautiful.
Not in red for a change.
No. Blue and white.
Yes.
Doesn't it look a picture?
Oh, just wonderful.
Doesn't it look a picture?
Following a 275 GTB4.
Yes, very paddock.
Those iconic 3 flaps at the front.
Yeah.
They're open for this run.
And the cam tail as well. The cut-off. You often hear people talk about the cam tail. Just a very sharp cut-off. People were still learning about aerodynamics at this point in motor racing's development in the late 50s through the early 60s and even in the early 70s. And there wasn't the card cam and wind tunnel development that you saw now. I mean, you look at the Bentley, the number 7 Bentley that won in 03, not that long ago, probably 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I was up at Bentley Motorsport at Crewe, and they started that up. It was diary day for starting up all the old cars, and I had a good look around that car.
Yeah.
You know what? If you'd rolled it out and painted a different colour, it looks so current now.
Well, that's what we said about the Toyota GT1 earlier, didn't we? About Peroda. It doesn't matter that it's 25 years old. In fact, it doesn't look 25 years old. And that cam tail thing we mentioned about there's a car here that's racing in one of the plateaus later on. Wolfgang Friedrich's Aston DP212 that's got the cam tail on the back, which didn't have when it first ran here, built for Graham Hill. Bear in mind, Graham Hill was on his way to his first world title at the time in Formula One, so it was a contemporary car. So it's like building Max Verstappen a car now. Aston, think about that. Just saying, you heard it here first on RSL. But the car was doing 185-ish miles an hour in 1962 with a straight 6 and cross plies. Think about that. But it was lifting the rear at the time, and it was chirping the tyres, so they put the cam tail on it.
I went to the launch for Jota of their Le Mans programme, and they had a 962 there alongside their brand new Le Mans.
963, yeah.
Do you know what surprised me? The 962 is lower.
Yeah.
It is actually 2 or 3 inches lower. It's the rules, of course. But,
just revel in the sights and sounds of Le Mans winners. Multiple Le Mans winners. can't imagine we'll see this again. We were fortunate enough to see this on Friday night at the Le Mans 24 Hours 3 weeks ago, and we were aware that there was a possibility of this happening here. And with the cars all at the museum for a wee while, it has come to pass. My goodness me.
Bentley, Audi, Peugeot, BMW, Jaguar, just first cars.
One of the great things about motor racing is we can hang on to our nostalgia because we got so much finite nostalgia. We've got all these cars. You think about golf. Golf's got a huge history in sport. Cricket's got a huge history. But what have they got to show for it? You know, photographs of old blokes and old bats. Golf clubs, the same. Here, we've got the very pieces of machinery that were part of the history.
We can always rely on Andrew Marriott for a social comment. Old blokes and old bats, marvellous.
Yeah, but it's true, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
There are not many sports, obviously motorcycle racing, they don't really honour their old bikes nearly so much, and they're not as charismatic, let's face it. You know, these are... Every person watching this will have their favourite here, will have their memory of that particular car and this particular aspect of it, and just as, you know, as John does and you do, and I mean, John just mentioned just the pure sound of that Mazda.
It's the same effect as music, isn't it? You always remember where you are when you first heard a certain piece of music.
Yeah.
It'll take you back to that moment in time. So you'll have the same here. You'll have a car that's, you know, the silk cut Jaguar. It's evocative of a period in time here, as is a Porsche with, you know, Rothmans, but the other brands are available.
It is, but you know, to be a motor racing fan takes a certain commitment. You know, not only you'll remember, not only will you remember seeing whichever one of these cars happens to be your favourite, but you'll probably remember the journey too.
And that Mazda, I remember so much about 1991 because I wasn't here. I missed it. It was the first and only Le Mans that I've missed since '89, missed working on, and therefore I made a point of making sure that I looked into it all. That Mazda, by the way, was also the TWR chassis was also the Mazda MXR 01, and it also became the Porsche 98 as well, the open top Porsche 98. So Tom really got his money's worth.
He really did.
Out of that one. It came, I think it came, did it come second at the first Petit Le Mans in 1998, beaten by the Ferrari 333? So it went through several iterations, that car, and it wouldn't have been here at Le Mans had it not been for Reinhold Jost putting some of his own money in and persuading Porsche to allow them to come here with that car.
I mean, we're very lucky that we see it from the sporting point of view, the spectacle. We watch the spectacle of the race and we get to talk about it because all these cars are in here, they're business. They're here for business. That's why we get to see the other side of it and forget it's all financial. It costs a lot of money. There's a reason why these people do it. We said, you know, it improves the breed and competition in road cars if you're selling them and that sort of thing. You know, Toyotas and Ferraris aren't here to win for the glory of it. That is a great part of it. It's a great marketing tool to sell the road product.
Of course, Honda have always said their main aim is to train their engineers and to train a way of thinking. Right? They come from a less marketing aspect of their racing programs.
Now, I don't think I saw it on track from a minute ago, but just down in the pit lane looking down, I could see black GT40, and the black GT40 to me is, of course, Rob Kaufman's 66 Le Mans winning car. Didn't see it go out there at the moment, but it's certainly down there in the pit lane.
Later on, we will see him racing that car, and there's some Mark IVs as well, but they're recreations but his is a genuine thing.
I just have to pose the question: can you imagine what the number would be to ensure the 1966 Le Mans winning Porsche?
I just don't think you do.
Porsche, Ferrari.
Yeah.
Let's get there.
Ford.
I'll get there eventually. Got myself mixed up. Thank you, John.
But no, I think you probably self-insure.
I think you can't.
Yeah, well, I think self-insure. Have to just to take that risk. But to race it, I mean, taking it around on display is one thing, but to race it,
yeah, in a very competitive event too. I mean, it's not.
Right, just take a moment. Everybody who's listened and watched that, because we will not see that again in our lifetime. Anybody here now, whether you're here at the track, whether you're watching or listening, I would be very surprised if any is around for the next major anniversary, which will be another 100 years, possibly, or maybe 50. But I don't see that you get that again in our lifetime. So we've seen something very special here, Andrew.
If they're clever, of course, they can do the anniversary of the 100th running, which
The
is not
100th
that
race. The
100th
100th
race.
race,
Yeah.
yes.
It's not that far away.
It's 9 years away.
Yeah. So Oh, we got Bentleys on track.
Marriott will still be here. Be in the commentary box. He won't have left.
Yes,
He'll be in the
it'll
booth.
still be here. So coming up next, we have a very special event, and this is a 45-minute race for a brand which in the early years of Le Mans, from the 20s through the 30s, was as to Le Mans as Porsche is now, I suppose, and as Audi was in the early 2000s. And that, of course, is the crew brand Bentley. Just over 100 years old now, for the cars that some of their competitors rather unkindly called lorries, because felt they weren't particularly stylish.
You know where the quote comes from? It's a Tour de Bugatti, described as the fastest lorry in the world at the time, because his cars were just poetic and artistically engineered. If you look at some of those, sort of engine turning on the dashboards and beautiful billeted front axles and chassis and things on a Bugatti, they were pieces of art as well. And a car that I thought should have been Italian, not French anyway, was a Bugatti. But we'll go into that. But these were just British and quite brutal.
And they're tough.
But they're
there's people using these, and you see the stickers on some of these very long-distance cross-country rallies, and they win in these Bentleys because they are just so strong and tough.
The majority of these cars will have been driven down. They will have not been trailered down. We passed a couple on our trip down earlier in the week. And Peter, they were in London in the early part of this week.
Yes, they were out on Tuesday. They part of this, the Benjafield Racing Club, which we'll expand on a bit more for this. They had, by the way, these cars doing traditional Le Mans start as well. For
yes, this is the first one we've seen.
A little while to get up there. Duncan Wiltshire's car there. In fact, and that looks like
the number 17.
Yeah, I think is that Duncan.
Is Duncan
in
it?
No, that's not him. That's not him.
I didn't
He's in the same colour, maybe a different number. He's normally 45, but may not be here. But yes, they set off from the RAC, of course, being the Royal Automobile Club. In Pall Mall in London, as it would in the day, as they would have celebrated in the day when they won Le Mans and gone back and celebrated in black tie. And they had all the cars lined up in London. I actually walked through the crowd and bumped into, of all people, Philip Strickland, who's chair of the Benjafield Racing Club, and a bit of a chat about this.
Explain the Benjafield Racing Club. I think we probably need to do that straight away.
Well, it's very simple. It's as their strapline says, preserving the historic spirit and sportsmanship of motorsport, and it goes back to. When it was founded in 1990 or 91, it was actually founded, and it was Dr. Benjafield was one of the drivers, one of the Bentley boys, one of the famous Bentley boys back in the 1920s, and won in 1927. That car, I believe, is in this race. It's certainly here, the 1927 winning car, and it is the car that won it.
Oh.
And clock this, it's the engine that won it as well.
Oh wow.
It's the same engine in that car still. Not just matching numbers, it's the same engine.
Right.
Same block, still running. So the Benjafield Club is basically, it was a little bit of a sort of breakaway thing back in the early 90s of wanting to go racing in a certain way. It is, of course, typically British, John, that it's by invitation only. Yes. Club. You can't apply, you are invited. Well, and if you're not invited, you know why.
Much like the Le Mans 24, let's be honest, there is still an invitation committee. Now, part of the World Endurance Championship now, and you can argue uphill and down dale about whether it should be or it shouldn't. So, in some effect, that sort of guarantees your entries, but it still has to be rubber stamped by the invitation committee. And, you know, and I'm not sure I want to lose that about this great race that we have here at Le Mans. I think it should be always an opportunity to bring the brightest and the best from the classes of motor racing around the world to which it is open. And as I say, that's probably a chat for another day. I think from 3 litres up to the 4.5 litre engine cars here, and a variety of styles in terms of the bodywork. It was quite common in this era. We're talking about the 1920s through to the mid-1930s to buy a chassis and an engine and take it to your coach builder of choice and say, right, I would like a 2-door sports body on that. I would like a 4-door touring body on that sort of
exactly,
thing.
yeah, exactly. So quite a lot of them you can, and quite a lot of these cars are part fabric bodied as well.
Yes,
so
yes.
You'll have a, obviously a metal chassis. You have your bonnet, the way it hinged, the way it worked as it did in those days to reveal the lovely double hinges. But quite a lot of them were fabric bodies then. Which means at least, well, they do rot, but they're not quite the same way. I always think they have such tiny little doors as well, because it was just an access panel, because they were so big and so high, as we mentioned, them literally basically lorries, but lots of leather straps and things like starting handles on cars in those days as well. You wouldn't necessarily have electric starters. You'd have a start handle, but that has to be tied out of the way for it. Leather straps on the bonnet to keep things down, because clips and things didn't work as efficient as everything does these days.
We're starting here, Andrew, within the first 2 decades of the motor car appearing anyway. So we are still in the very early days of motoring, and the connection to horse-drawn carriages is just starting to drift away. But things like spoke wheels, leaf springs, etc., are still very much there, and the art of the coach builder came from coach and horses.
Absolutely. And some of our expressions still come from horses, don't they? The paddock, for instance.
Yes.
Example.
Well, that goes all back to Brooklands when they first started in 1907, and they just transferred all the horse racing terminology across to stewards, clock of the courses, paddocks. They had weighbridges, and they had tote and everything in those days, of course. And at Brooklands back in 1907, they had the drivers wore silks.
Yes.
They did not wear
colours.
Yes. But the problem was, because the track was so big, the spectators couldn't see them. So they sort of need to drop this and adopt. We'll put some numbers on the cars instead. But basically, it's horse racing terminology. That's the infrastructure.
I've been lining them up in echelon for a Le Mans start, and just because I'm of the age I am, I saw Le Mans starts here.
Did you?
And the extraordinary thing was, there was total silence.
Yes.
The flag dropped, and you could hear the patter of the feet as they ran. You could actually hear it up in the grandstand, well, the press tribune then. Extraordinary.
The press tribune was on the outside of the track in those days, which is in fact where the ACO would like to move it back to in a state-of-the-art broadcast.
You could hear them running, of course. Then safety belts came in. That's what stopped it. There was concern that people weren't doing their safety belts up, and of course, the last year of it, Jackie Hicks protested against it. He walked across the track, which was a dangerous thing to do, actually. But I was having a discussion with...
But there was a death at the start of that race because someone hadn't done their safety belts up properly.
I don't think there was, but there was a concern there might be. But, I mean...
John Wolfe, wasn't it?
I thought it was John Wolfe.
John Wolfe.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, had he or hadn't he? He had a very big accident anyway. I'm not sure he would have survived it.
As in Wolfe race wheels?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
1969.
But it was, so I saw 3 or 4 of them. But they're going to do a Le Mans. I actually recreated a Le Mans start a few years ago at the Bahamas Speed Week revival.
Of course you did.
In Nassau, and we had both Phil Hill and Sterling Moss there, and because they used a Le Mans start at the Nassau Speed Week, and I had a GoPro camera in the car that Sterling was in, and the most fantastic shot. I mean, this was 20 years ago, I suppose, of him jumping into the car in a GoPro from an onboard. It was terrific.
Fantastic. You mentioned there about the absolute silence before the race in those days when it was that running start across the track. And if you go back, if you haven't seen the 1970 film Le Mans as Steve McQueen, it's one of the best ever pieces of cinematography. They convey that so well with that heartbeat and the clock, and they showed the clock ticking down to 4 o'clock the start.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the best bits of cinematography ever, of just conveying a sporting event. The fact it's motor racing in hours is fine, but it doesn't matter what it was. They've conveyed the feeling of that so well.
So we're live from Le Mans for the Le Mans Classic, heading into the afternoon session with our first race, and a small selection of Bentleys, 70 in total.
I
3 score and 10.
suppose we ought to talk about blowers and non-blowers, haven't we?
Well, indeed, indeed.
Supercharged
or not?
Yeah, well, I don't know if our editor heard that, but he went from a supercharged car to a non-supercharged car just as we came on screen. For those lucky enough to be watching this on screen, I realise quite a few of you may be motoring, so I often listen to car races when I'm motoring. And obviously, as John said earlier on, don't try and watch it on the screen.
Don't watch it while you're driving. That's why we have RS1 for you, to save you a bit of bandwidth as well. Ultimately, a 4-stroke... Right, here's a bit of science. As I learned in motor vehicle technology at Farringdon Comprehensive School, thank you, Mr. Cram, the Otto cycle, or 4-stroke cycle, is suck, squash, bang, blow. That's basically how it works. And in the suck phase, which is the induction phase, you take in a mixture of fuel and air. And depending on how much fuel and air you get into the cylinder and how efficiently you burn it, it then pushes down the piston to turn you eventually into forward motion. Then the piston comes back up and you have what's called the exhaust phase. Now, there are a number of ways of actually supercharging that mix. Supercharging is one and turbocharging is another. There's an inherent advantage, Peter, with supercharger because it's, particularly in the early years, it had much less latency than a turbocharger. Turbo is driven by the exhaust gases coming out.
On the exhaust stroke.
Whilst a supercharger is actually driven from, those of you who've ever driven agricultural machinery, it's effectively a power takeoff from the engine, and it's driven directly from the crankshaft.
From the crankshaft, yeah. And of course, any internal combustion engine, it's mechanical parts, and it's limited with how much it can rev. Usually, your valve gear, your top stuff, and whatever. So it's how much those revolving, reciprocating parts can move. So supercharged, if you look at some of these Bentleys, when you see them going around the track, you'll see it right on the front. It's
aluminium
casing. Looks like a
casing.
Massive PTO shaft in it in terms of agricultural sense on the front, and that is what quite literally supercharges the engine.
And
makes it run quicker.
You have contra-rotating vanes in there. There's a couple of different types. The Roots, of course, is probably best known, and it compresses the fuel, the air mixture. You can put more fuel into it, and therefore, in terms of what's going into the cylinder, you get a bigger bang for your buck.
Compressor is the other term they used. The Germans use that term.
Compressor, K.
So
when you see SSKs,
the compressors.
That was K for compressor.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you think of it as as a cup of tea, basically you can only get a certain amount of tea in your cup of tea unless you compress it. Now, liquid doesn't compress it in the same way as gases do. But if you could compress that down a bit, that cup of tea, you'd squeeze a bit more in the top. And that's the same concept that you're talking about.
It's what we always refer to when we say a 3-litre car, it's cubic capacity, 3,000 cubic centimetres.
Correct.
It's the sweat volume of the piston area, the chamber. As you say, and on that induction stroke, you pull it down, pull in that mixture, compress it, and then stick a spark on it at the top. And then it fires it down, that's your power stroke, and then you've got your exhaust to get rid of it all. There are various clever ways over the last century of evolving that, and that's the thing I've said before now, John, that we sit here, we get so used to using, in historic racing, like this classic Le Mans, of a year and a car. So we'll say a 65 Ferrari or a 47, whatever it be. We'll say a 1923 Bentley, because it fits, it's a phrase.
Yes.
What we don't stop and think about is 1923 is 100 years ago.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's what we forget.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And as much as these cars are evocative of the past and the early days of motoring, in some ways, quite a lot of them here are bang up to date because they're running on synthetic fuel. Well,
15 of the cars taking part in this are running on that. And I've had a good chat with the people that are involved in that. It's one brand, there's different, there's Aramco and there's P1, there's various bits of fuels available. The more it gets used, I don't think economy of scale, the price is going to come down. It's around about 6 €6 a litre at the moment but actually not much different to race fuel, to be honest. But the technological changes and the setups and things you have to do to the engines, these cars are 100 years old to run synthetic fuels. Can you imagine how long that list is? Don't bother getting your pen out. It's nothing. Absolutely nothing.
So no changes whatsoever?
It's a change of fuel. That is it. Nothing else.
Interesting.
Put it in the tank, start it up, run it.
Off on another tack, Bentley, of course, are now building some recreations of the Bentley motors, and I believe one's racing here today.
Yes, Andrew Frankel, isn't he, for Motorsports Driving One, the
Motorsport magazine.
Motorsport magazine, yes, is driving the blower Bentley,
which is completely recreated. They had the original drawings, and they've also scanned a car digitally, and have built. I think they're building.
Well, as long as the car they scanned is one of the drawings, we're fine.
Well, and that is an issue, isn't it? When you know, I've been involved in a couple of projects like that down through the years, and recreations, particularly of things like Ford GTs, GT40s. There was barely two of them alike.
Yeah.
And a panel from one car would not necessarily fit a panel from another. And these were very much Bentley. It still is, in fairness. If you ever get the chance to go to Crewe and go and see the world's slowest production line, and I say that with great love because they brag about it, you actually have to look at the very edges of the machinery that's moving around to see that it's moving. Basically, these are still, Bentleys you buy now are still artisanally built in so many different areas. Yes, of course, they employ the latest technology in areas where it will make a difference, where, for example, cutting things out, you can do nowadays by machine quicker and more accurately than you've ever been able to do before. But things that still needs the craftsman's eye, so leather work, some of the stitching, the steering wheels are still handmade for current Bentleys and take something like 28 hours. I was going to say man hours there, person hours, because mostly it isn't men that do it. They are seamstresses who also do the stitching. The wood shop is a thing of beauty. Bentley still make their own ply. They don't buy in ply, so they make their own ply. But the holes that are then cut in it for the dials on the dash, they're cut out by machine because that could do it quickly and efficiency at a tiny, 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 tiny. I was going to say latency there, accuracy.
Yeah.
But what you can't do, you can't teach a machine to know when a piece of the veneer that goes on the top is finished. You can't do that. It might be 2 layers of polish, it might be 5. And only a practice eye and a hand can do that.
I don't think engineers at Bentley cut holes in dashboards. I think they fashion them.
Fashion them. OK, well, yes.
There was a fabulous story years ago of when, obviously, sort of Bentley and Rolls-Royce were 2 different makes, and they amalgamated as a company, and then there were Bentleys that were badged Rolls-Royces.
Yep.
That's now grown away again. But when they first started to do performance again, Bentley weren't really sure how to do it, so they needed somebody with some experience. So they went to Aston Martin with an idea to say to their engineers and say their technical team and say, we want to make something a little bit different to being a Rolls-Royce with a Bentley badge on it. We want to make it more of a Bentley sporting history, as we're seeing here, with a nod to all this. And they said, looked at the suspension setup, and apparently they were engineers at Bentley were suggesting a 10% increase in stiffness on the spring, on the suspension. And apparently Aston Martin looked at them and just said, well, if you start with 50, you'll be getting somewhere nearer. Make it totally different. Don't make it a stiffer Rolls-Royce. Make it and keep the two brands side by side, but
it was
different things.
It was always the adage, wasn't it, that you were driven in a Rolls-Royce, you drove a Bentley.
Yeah.
And when the two companies were separate, they amalgamated for quite a long time. Rolls-Royce now part of BMW, and Bentley part of Audi and Volkswagen AG. Huge amount of investment in both of those brands. In Bentley, I mean, the first tranche of investment, how long is it now? 25 years ago, maybe more, was €500 million. They reintroduced apprenticeships at Crewe, which were massively oversubscribed, but they have been a part of the apprenticeship scheme in the UK since then, and it's been a huge success. Crewe is once again a Bentley town, and they are still producing wonderful motor cars, as the last of the 70 are being backed up against the wall. And long may they do so. Rolls-Royce have gone their own way. They've now got a big factory in the UK, not too far from Goodwood Racing Circuit. And they have, in fact, Rolls have just brought out their all-electric Spectre, haven't they?
Yeah.
And Bentley are transitioning towards battery electric as well. But for me, I mean, the 4-litre V8, 6 3/4 is your absolutely traditional Bentley of more modern era, V8, turbo or non-turbo. But the 4-litre that they produced in association with Audi and Volkswagen Group, which has seen service in pretty much all the brands there, it's probably one of its last incarnations is in the Cayenne GT Turbo, which has already been discontinued. 640 horsepower. Just brilliant piece of kit. All right, everybody, stand by. This is the Benjafield racing race, 45 minutes, 70, 70 Bentleys sitting tails into the wall in the way that it used to be. There wouldn't have been a wall there back in the day. At the front of the field, Derek Bell with the flag, Bentley ambassador.
Yeah, I think he's got a dealership in Naples, Florida.
And he's ready to flag them away as they would have been done up to 1969. Listen, we won't listen to this. Let's hear it go quiet. The spots used to be painted on the side of the track with the starting positions.
Yeah.
And of course, in the early days, there was no qualifying. The biggest engine was given the lowest number and started at the front, which actually, when you think about it, is quite sensible.
We should go back to it. What was wrong with that?
Cadillac will say yes to that straight away.
Exactly.
So just a quickie, on pole position, Clive Morley, one of the great Bentley Morley family.
And that has been qualifying for this, yes.
4 generations of Morleys have raced Bentleys. He is the father, so there's 2 sons now racing.
2 sons now works Bentley drivers.
Yeah, Stuart, of course. Stuart.
So that's the number 1. That's the number 58,
Yeah.
4.5 litre from 1926. One of the oldest cars here. We do have a Super Sports from 1923. That's further down the field. That's the number 19 car.
Celebrating its centenary at the Centenary.
Yeah.
Come on, what a line. I mean,
Clive's owned quite a few Bentleys. He's probably owned a 15 or 20. Some of them he's put aircraft engines in.
yeah, well, he always was a bit of a thug, wasn't he?
The tricolour.
In the nicest possible way.
The tricolour is in the hands of, appropriately enough, Britain's most successful Le Mans driver, Bentley ambassador Derek Bell. How is he not Sir Derek Bell yet? Stand by. The tension rises.
Still looks a film star. He's always looked like a film star. He still does.
Yes!
Run.
Allez, mesdames et messieurs, applaudissez Ben Cabot!
Now let's see the engines fire. Going through the starting procedures. Magnificent. They're getting off. Oh, somebody made a couple of places up early on there from down in the midfield, being very sensible. The most expensive traffic jam you have ever seen. Bouchon on the front straight. And we've got a couple of cars that are more recalcitrant than others. But we have got them away. Now, they won't go directly into racing here. They will fall into line and get a green flag slightly further around the circuit. So the number 31, the Speed 1927 Tourer, the 3-litre, get away decently. And the difference in size, Andrew, between some of these cars is quite marked.
See it on the screen. Yeah. Thought the 16 is...
No, that one hasn't started.
That's John Breslow in his 3-litre from 1924, so it's only 99 years old.
We've got an Argentine.
Stripling.
We've got an Argentine father and son in this, right up at the front of the number 9, the Silikis, who come to this event every year.
Yeah, Carlos and Matthias. Yeah.
Carlos is the dad.
In a super sports.
It is a 45-minute timed race, and it is Clive Morley in the 1926 4.5 litre that is leading out from Martin Overington in a blower from 1929. They are forming back up again.
Well, are they, John? Because the clock's running.
Oh, yes, but I think they get a green flag once they've all sorted themselves out, in order not to have any... if you notice, there's yellow flags waving around the circuit, so we are effectively under yellow flags, and the green flag, I think, waves coming out of Tertre Rouge.
It's interesting to see the rear treatments of these cars. Some literally with a slab fuel tank on the back, the fuel tank is inside the bodywork.
They used to call them boat tails, didn't they?
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Hence the term barchetta.
But as you go back to coach building, because in those days it wasn't always about performance, and that could be that very much you bought your chassis and your engine setup, as you say, I want this on it, and that's what you'd have.
Some of them have got little aero screens like our leading car. Others have got full screens. Some of them have got them folded down. Some haven't. All kinds of different ideas going on here.
Bentleys at Le Mans, 71 cars listed as starting as they go through the Daytona chicane, which would not have been there. This is not as in period. It would have been a flat-out blast. In fact, of course, the circuit in the early days was not this configuration of circuit. They had a much longer run down into town in the Pont-Lieu hairpin. However, as Le Mans expanded, and how about this for a story we've heard many times down through the years, the residents were a little bit annoyed about the sound. Fantastic start from about 10th back for the number 5, which was down...
Robert Debray, yeah.
Yeah, now how far was that down the field when it started? That was well down the field. The outside the top 10. Marvellous stuff.
Handbrake off.
I think I might have just left it in gear. Well, it looks like they're still under yellows at the moment as they are cruising down side by side as they come into the second chicane, still very much in grid order. And even if you got a decent start, you would have been asked to do the decent thing, old chap, and drop back to your qualifying position. 55 going through second chicane, 3-litre Super Sport from 1925. Now, I have a picture of my father when he was a toddler, probably 3 or 4, standing on the running boards of what I believe was a late 1920s 4.5 litre non-blower, and it belonged to my grandfather. Ask me where it is, Snowy.
In this race?
No, it's not, because I don't know where it went, because at the outbreak of war, this would have been, so my dad was born in 1933, so this would have been just before the start of World War II, and at the outbreak of World War II, my grandfather, who was a policeman in Sunderland, decided to trade it for a Studebaker, and ran the Studebaker during the war, because he got petrol coupons, swapped it with a doctor.
Rationing, yes, it was.
Absolutely.
Yes, petrol rationing.
The doctor as well, of course, had petrol coupons. I know not where the Bentley or nor the Studebaker ever went.
Ever the way, ever
but
the way.
But it was in my grandfather's name, who was another. So somewhere, and given that 99.5% of all Bentleys ever made are still running, there is a Bentley somewhere with an owner that is John Hindorf on it.
Yeah,
and I need to claim that back, I think.
Well, I think you do.
It's rightfully mine.
Absolutely so. I did hear a figure the other day, actually, that I think it is 80... It is 80-something% of Bentleys made
ridiculous.
are still running.
It's ridiculous.
And I know Astons are about 75 at least, so...
I think there's a new TV programme here. You know how you find your lost relative? You
find a lost car.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mariotti with his TV production hat
I can see the wheels going round now. I don't mean on the track. I'm just looking in Hindhaught's head. Yes.
The race will start in... no, that has started.
It has started.
It has started, yes, sir.
It is counting down. Pit window will open in about 8 minutes and close 15 minutes after that. So for those cars that are going to come in and change drivers, it looks like we're getting something more akin to a race now as they've broken back. Yes, there's the green flag. So green flag's been shown from Indianapolis or thereabouts onwards to let everybody get into line. So now we'll see a little bit quick. Oh, bit of wheel spin there.
Oh, I can smell the Castrol R.
And that was fantastic from XR7117. Most of these cars, if not all of them, I think, Snowy, are indeed road registered.
Yes, well, don't forget the vast majority of these drove down here. Ones that certainly for the English-based ones, they drove down here, and it was part of. I don't think it was regulations or mandatory, but it was, shall we say, expected.
Expected,
dear boy.
Well, and
let's you drive them down here, and drive them back.
Yes, let's not forget the ACO were very particular in the early days about making this event for road cars. This was about proving the pace and the reliability and the technology of what was then still a newfangled automobile.
As you said, 20 years in, we were almost not quite 3 decades into motoring as it was then. It was still very embryonic, and that was the whole point of 24-hour races, was to prove these things, to sell them to the public.
It was only relatively late on in the early years, if that makes sense, that the ACO finally decided that it would be a good idea to have some prototypes, particularly after World War II. The cars that were available were mostly pre-war cars, and eventually they bowed to pressure from the entrants to have what they're called prototypes, and allowed them in, still, however, keeping very much classes for road-based cars.
We must watch out for the number 23 car, I think it is, of Gregor Fiskin, the Bentley Blower 1930. Gregor has stepped out of that Dallara, whatever it was. He was in the earlier racing.
It's the
36 car, yeah.
36. It's a 31 blower.
Yeah. So he has been racing a full downforce sports prototype, and now he's in his Bentley. How different can that be? But still, your racing juices are flowing, aren't they?
So coming through across the line, and they are scored with Clive Morley leading from Martin Overington, Carlos Stelecki. So that is 58, 44 and 9, being a 4.5 litre from 1926, a 1929 blower, a 1926 Super Sport. Then Neil Davies went through in the number 28 Bluebell, the Bentley Bluebell 1928 machine. That's got a story behind it as well. Another Super Sport 1926, Nicholas Sleep. That was the number 17 car, the lighter blue car that was on, we were talking about on the grid earlier on. Then a Bentley from 25 for Richard Hudson. This is a Bentley 3-stroke 4.5 litre.
Big Aston Martin man as well, Richard Hudson. Races his Aston and his Bentley. Yeah. Has a foot in both camps.
This is just glorious, isn't it? You almost want this to be filmed in black and white, don't you?
I think an honourable mention as well to number 67, which is the 3-litre Vanden Plough Tourer from 1925 of Philip Strickland, who is the chairman of the Benjafield Racing Club.
What number was that?
67.
Excellent. Keep an eye open for that one. I totally missed that one.
And Philip won't mind me saying, but he's nearly as old as his car.
It's time to change for the lead, I think.
I think that was all down to the klaxon sounding.
Yes.
In fact, as they went past the camera position, you may have just heard that gently in the background. We do have the Bentley Speed 6 Old number 3 from 1930, which is running the number 3. That's Peter Neumark behind the wheel of that car, running down in 30th position as they went across the line. And yes, I think you're right, Andrew, as we go through the Daytona chicane. It
Yeah,
is
so
indeed
Overington
the
in the lead, yeah.
It is the number 44, the 1929 blower. Talking about that supercharger, of course, you would be able to engage or disengage the blower, Snowy, with effectively with a lever inside the cockpit when it was required.
Yeah, exactly, because it didn't need to drive it all the time, because it's now done on sensors and efficiently, and those days it wasn't. It was mechanical. Don't forget some of these cars as well, just the simple operating of them. Some of the pedals would have been the wrong way round. When I say that, you'd have the clutch pedal on the left, accelerator in the middle, brake on the right. Yeah, you'd have things like a manual advance and retard of the ignition system on a lever on the steering wheel, where you'd have to advance the ignition to make sure it combusted in spot differently, and then back off when you're on the straight, otherwise it wouldn't work properly. All done manually. And if you can imagine that now, the very, very labour intensive. And as you said, John, doing this in the period on gravel roads around here. So it's no wonder they were absolutely shattered at the end of a race.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hear that supercharger going by.
I was just about to say, listen for the high-pitched whine of the supercharger. Anyone who's ever driven a supercharged car, there is a visceral, almost animalistic sound that comes when the supercharger goes on. The early advances that were made in supercharging in these cars were absolutely critical to making power in aeroplane engines for World War II.
Yeah, Spitfire in particular.
When you got to higher altitude and the air wasn't at the air was thinner, and you didn't have as much oxygen in the air, the use of superchargers on internal combustion engines, they all went side by side with motor racing.
Well, Clive Morley's not done with this. He's dropped down to third place at one point on this lap. When the Argentinian driving sequel, in which one of the father or son is driving the car first. But he's regained that position back again. It was almost a second and a half down on the 44 Martin Overington car, which he's now got that down to 0.3 of a second again. So they may be nearly 100 years old, but they're just being driven just as competitively as they were in the day, and rightly so. No museum pieces here.
Well, there are people who use these cars, if not on a daily basis, certainly weekly, and have racked up enormous mileages on these cars. I did see a picture of one of these cars, this age of cars, towing a trailer with a Porsche 962 on it.
Why ever not? Perfectly logical. Perfectly logical.
Perfect tow car.
We mentioned
huge sideways moment coming out of Arnage.
Is that Mr. Fiskin?
That was. I think it looks as it's count, doesn't it?
It does look like Mr. Fiskin. It'd be the kind of thing he was trying. Just very quick, we mentioned Birdcage Maserati on the celebration parade. Sir Honourable Patrick Lindsay. He at one point owned the Napier Railton, the car that holds the outer circuit lap record at Brooklands, yes?
Which will never be beaten, obviously.
Never be beaten in perpetuity. 143 miles an hour, 1935, John Cobb. And what did he do with it in the 70s?
He used it on the farm, didn't he?
It was his pub car.
Oh, his pub car.
And he'd go down, put the kids in it and go down to the pub. And it was his farm car. Because it had massive ground clearance, so he could get it across the fields. A car that was nearly lost to the nation.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. Into another section of the track that would not have been here when these cars were racing for the first time. So that was the number 58 car, which is Clive Morley who was getting sideways. So that was the battle for the lead there. Clive Morley and Martin Overington, and it looks like Clive's lost the lead again. He's dropped back into second in the slightly smaller machine. It is the is that the 44 that's gone back ahead of him? Yes, I think it has.
Yeah, it's been that way for half part of this lap now, yes. But if there's one word I would use to describe Clive Morley, it is tenacious. Certainly when he put him in at the wheel of his Bentley.
Watch out as they come across the line if you're here at the track for the number 17 in 5th position. That's Nicholas Sleep in the Super Sports from 1926. It does have the number 17 on the front grille. Now we've got a problem at 29, which is the exit of Arnage. Already thinking about calling people in. The pit window is open. The laps are about 6.5 minutes, and the pit window is 13 minutes from now.
Well, they were very smart, matching pit boards and matching race suits.
One
Or
would
mechanics
expect
overall.
nothing
Yeah,
more.
that board out for one of the drivers, Adrian Wilmot. I can't see which car number he's in at the moment, but I know Adrian quite well. In fact, I raced with him at we raced in a Healy 100S at Goodwood Revival a few years ago, run by Colin Blower, an ex-Le Mans car itself, Lance Macklin car. And Adrian went and bought a Blower Bentley to do this race.
Oh, did he?
As you do. And a real one, not a recreation. Or I'm not disparaging on a recreation, but he just went and bought, well, that's what you do.
Side by side again, coming out of Turk Rouge onto the Mulsanne Straight. And here comes the number 9 of Carlos Salehi in the Super Sport from 1926. And the big sideways moment from Martin from Clive Morley, rather, a little while ago.
It's all,
the Varnage.
it's all terribly close, isn't it? You would think those two have broken away a little bit, and then there's a big group.
I mean, they have the aerodynamic efficiency of a small cottage in Shropshire. So I can only imagine that you don't have to be that close to get a bit of a draft. Bad news, I'm afraid, for followers of and the connections of the number 41, which is Martin Hunt, in a 4.5 litre from 1927. I suspect that was something similar to my grandfather's car. Might be my grandfather's car. The only problem is I haven't got any pictures of it with the registration number on it.
That does make the case more difficult, doesn't it? Yes. An honourable mention as well for number 51, which is Mihai Negrescu, who's his first ever race.
Oh, what?
Oh, you're kidding me?
Yeah, no, I met him a couple of years ago at Goodwood and did some little bit of coaching with him and got him encouraged. And he said to me at the time he wanted to do this race, and he's been got his R's license, and he's starting his first ever race is this in a Bentley.
Now,
so we've got the Bentley part on the side of the track.
This is very much of the time, because only the driver could work on the car with tools in the car and with bits that were in the car. You had the ride-on mechanics earlier on, but they soon disappeared. Also keep an eye out for Christopher Batty in the number 11, the 1928 3-litre. That's the yellow Bentley out there. Into the pits. Now, here's the start of the pit stop sequence. And now that looks like it's a single driver car. So
that's
this
Mika Lazarus coming in with his first, that's the first one to do the
so he's just going to sit there, have a cup of tea, a Coronation chicken sandwich. They've got the... See, you really need a period stopwatch there rather than the mobile phone.
You do.
Do you know what? I'm going to completely agree with you on that and just say that should be part of the rules. Going all this way, then you go and put a smartphone in front of the guy. But just have a stopwatch and do it properly. Absolutely correct. I'm going to suggest that to Philip Strickland.
Well, we have this problem with people wearing modern crash helmets in these cars that don't look. Yeah, well, that's the safety. Oh, he's got it going. Well, he got under the bonnet, under the leather strap.
He clearly knew.
He knew what to do. Yeah.
Clearly knew exactly what to do, because he went to the left-hand side front of the engine.
I think that was scripted.
Fiddled with something and then fired it.
That was.
Do you think it was?
Yes.
I'm sure it was.
Quite a bit of patina on that car, 35.
Yep.
And that's another thing I like about these cars. They are not over-restored. They've been used. They're still being used. They're still being raced. And you know, this harks back to that era, doesn't it, where motor cars were still fairly new, and people would drive them during the week. You wouldn't have a separate car to go racing.
No.
You would race the car that you had, and you'd probably drive it to a race. If you were very fortunate, you might have a spare set of wheels and tyres, but not always. And you might have your mechanic, you might have your man to help you along a bit.
But that carried on right through to the 60s.
Oh, absolutely, it did.
I remember talking to Ian Moss in the Aston Club, who was a works mechanic at the time for Jim Clark, etc. He said the one event of the year they hated the most was Le Mans. Not because it was so long or whatever, it's because the possibility of getting home in the car that you'd driven down there was highly unlikely.
Yeah,
yes.
Correct. So,
Can you imagine that?
Battles continuing down the field.
Well, I expect they had to repair the thing first.
Yes. Yes, if you were stuck in France for hours when you want to go home and go out and go and see your mates and stuff. But imagine the job being given a Le Mans car, whether it be an Aston or a Ferrari or whatever it may be, a Jaguar, whatever, and you've got to drive it to Le Mans, service it, let it do the race, then drive it home.
Well, the D-types.
Couldn't make it up now, could you?
The D-types were doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, part of the reason that the Astons were kept so far away rather than locally was the DBR ones that won in '59.
Yeah.
Was basically they had the transaxle was known to be a problem on them if they weren't warmed up properly and thoroughly. So it was better to have the car driven some distance to the circuit, ready for the race, than it was to have it too close.
Mike Littlewood in the red number 50, Ewan Getley and David Little in the 47 and 55. The red car is a 3 litre from 1926, and around him he's got that 3/4.5 litre and the Super Sport from 1925. That's the number 55 car. Oh, and diving into the pits? No, just taking the racing line. You can certainly drift these cars.
Littlewood's in second now, isn't he? He's got ahead of Clive Morley.
Yes, he has.
Yes, he has, yeah. He's going
Litre.
And looks to me, he's ready for
Ready for
attempt
first.
at the leading position here, drawing alongside. Got quite a bit of speed.
Still in the 44.
Now, Clive Morley cleverly getting a toe there off
yeah.
the leading car. So nothing's new, is it?
No.
Nothing's new. Taking it back, got the toe of the leading car, trying to dive up the inside to take the lead again, and Clive Morley is going to retake the lead.
This is marvellous.
That was a bit of daring do, wasn't it? That was boys' own barn stuff.
But the red car is smoking a little bit, I think.
Yeah, in third
It's old enough to do that's leading.
Although it takes a tight line there, and he snatched second place
through
under the
Dunlop
Dunlop
that
Bridge.
was, yeah, absolutely.
Well, no, it didn't quite make it.
It's on the right line for the S's bit there, but not quite.
I'm very surprised that these guys didn't pit. We've only got, but they'll have to come in at the next time around, and they're running at just over 6.5 minutes at the moment. The difference in size of these cars are extraordinary, not just in the height, but also in the length of these cars. Down the inside at Turk Rouge.
I think this is going to work this time, isn't it?
For the number 50. This is the red car we're talking about of Mike Littlewood in the 3 litre from 1926. Pit stops ongoing. Very elegant. The Ewan Getley, Anna Getley in this race as well. That's the 3/4.5 litre from 1926.
Yeah, old lady driver line up there, Louisa and Anna. Yeah.
In the 57 car, which is also in the pits, Neil Davis is in with the blue belt. Peter Little in with the 3 litre Sport from 1927. These cars have come from all over the world. Of course, they are the pride of Great Britain, but they are highly sought after and very much prized. Just saw the number 4 coming in there. That was Joe Laub in a 4.5 litre Tourer from 1929. That's another red car.
The 52 4-seat Tourer, Matthew Moore, number 52, having to take on water, so mechanic going there with bare arms, but those modern gloves where you can undo the radiator cap and get the cap off. And just
gets in there, Paul Pocciol.
Yeah.
Absolutely
much curb as
nailing
possible.
the curb in his Tourer from 1925. Well, that wasn't very touring. Oh, no, it was a bit more touring car, wasn't it? Take all of the curb.
Yeah.
He says he's watched too much modern racing.
Yeah. The sensation of speed in these things, and effectively an open cockpit, no seat belts, of course. The idea was that you would be thrown out.
Now, John, Clive Morley's not only put it into the lead by 3.2 seconds, he set the quickest sector 1 at 58.1 on this lap.
And it'll surprise you not at all to know that the number 50, the red car that's in third, set the fastest lap of the race last time around, the 6:26.0. That was fully at 6 seconds quicker than the cars ahead, and that's why he was battling for the lead. Also in the pits, the number 65, which is the Steve Seaman 4.5 litre from 1927. Now, we should say it might be 4.5 litres, Peter, but that's a 4-cylinder.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a over a litre a cylinder. Big piston, isn't it? Martin Overington has just responded with a quicker sector 2 than Clive Morley, but just by a second.
How lovely is that? I said watch out for the number 11 because it's the yellow car, so it's fairly easy to pick out. And Christopher Batty's brought that 3 litre in with the polished cowl all the way back on it. Just lovely.
Well, as you said, works of art, aren't they? These cars are quite extraordinary. It's just not only do they perform well and had great success and on very evocative of a certain age, but they're just so beautifully engineered and built as well. And I have to keep reminding myself just how old these cars are. It's quite extraordinary. Clive Morley coming under increasing pressure now. That gap's down to by a second from Overington in number 44 in the blower. Pit stops though. These guys must need to pit stop this lap, I'd have thought, John. These two. Have we got much time left on the window? We've got pit window still open. Still our timing screen is
till 5 past.
Till 5 past. Okay, thank you. 3 minutes left on it. A bit under 3 minutes.
5 past and 12 seconds, actually, to be absolutely correct.
So they do need to pit this lap then.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely they do. There's an element of sort of motorcycle and sidecar about how you drive these cars. The guy's leaning over to, I'm sure not to counterbalance what is quite a big car, but just basically to get the feel of what's going on underneath them. Now, we've got a car stopped out on the circuit, and it is the number 41. I'm maybe asking for directions, or for in this race, maybe for a recommendation for a good dinner reservation.
I was going to say that'd be like directions wouldn't be, because that would be classified as outside the system, so you wouldn't be allowed to do that. But where's a good place for dinner, my dear chap?
Where does one
totally acceptable.
No consensus of opinion on where the headlights go. They're in all sorts of different positions.
Well, I'm thinking that a few minutes ago. None of these are taking it very seriously, because what they used to do in that period was turn the headlights around.
Yes.
Face up to wave. 2 benefits of that. One, stone chip didn't damage the glass on the cars. Of course, we're running on gravel roads in the days, so a lot better conditions these days. But also, the bowl, the cowling is slightly more aerodynamic on the back one. So but I don't think you're allowed to do that these days.
By the way, it was Martin Hunt in the 1927 4.5 litre that had stopped to acquaint himself with the marshals. Thank you to all of our marshals, by the way, for giving us the precious gift of their time. That was on his out lap, so it may have just been making sure everything was all right.
I think Morley went into the pits. Ovington has continued. There he is, with the Union Jack.
Well, the pit window open legend, I was just going to say, it's just disappeared off our timing screen with nothing and just been replaced as I speak with pit window closes in 1 minute.
Well, he's blown it.
Yes, my point. Well, he's blown it, literally.
Yeah, in his blower Bentley, he's blown it.
Yeah.
Huge amount of negative camber on the front wheels of these cars with leaf spring suspension.
Positive camber.
Positive camber, excuse me,
Which is just counterintuitive to any kind of racing you've ever known. You don't have to race a racing car, but even a road car. But just to look at cars, to have the wheels pointing out at the top.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, negative camber is looking at the front of the car, the top of the wheel leans in. The idea being as the car loads, your tread pattern of your tyre takes up better space on the track. To point them out the opposite way just means you're going to work the car on the sidewall even more.
You didn't tell a Tory Bugatti that, did you?
No.
Well, or Scotland's Porsche, the Hillman Imp.
Yes.
Oh, no, he stopped again. This was an outlap for the number 41.
No, that's you're right, Martin Hunt. Yes.
Yeah, it's Martin.
My apologies. Yes, you're right, John.
And also, by the way, no mobile phones in the cars. Field telephones only.
Wind-up field telephones.
Well, you see, we talk about that, and we're having a bit of joke about that, and trying to put things into perspective for historical accuracy. It was Bentley here at Le Mans who popularised using the hairpin after Mulsanne as the signalling pins. They did it first, and eventually it was turned into the signalling pin. And they did it with old field telephones and ran cable all the way from the pits, and then wound it up because it was one of the slower places on the track, and there was no pit wall to hang out a pit board over. There was no pits to car radio. So as you came through the slowest part of the circuit, You chalked something onto a chalkboard, and that was the time that they saw.
Now, I will explain this because otherwise this is a visual which isn't very good for radio. But on a certain brand of fruit-based modern smartphone,
Yeah.
you have a stopwatch, as we saw them using in the pit watch. There is also a second screen where you can get it onto, you can do it either way. There you go. It looks like a proper stopwatch.
That's what you need to have.
So if they were using that,
I'd allow that.
I think that'd be allowed. It looks like a genuine chronograph.
Yeah,
Yes,
like it. Pit window has now closed. Now I think. Oh dear, that's a
axle tramp, say the least.
front axle tramp though. Something's gone wrong there. That's down at Turk Rouge. That's quick into there for UL 663.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because I love driver's mentality. It's barrelling into the gravel, so he's kept his foot in, opposite lock on to catch the drift, and then looking over his right shoulder, doing the shoulder check as to how soon can I rejoin the track safely without losing any momentum. That's what I love it.
I think that might have been the number 20, Christian Dumoulin, in the Le Mans short chassis car, as quite clearly we're right in the middle of the pit stops. Now, a lot of these cars have the number 8 or 7 on the grille, single numbers on the grille. That again comes down to the fact that they would have been on the entry list in engine size. One of the reasons that the number 7 has been, I think, one of the most successful numbers here at Le Mans down through the years, particularly in the early years.
Ovington has just done a 6:24.
Oh.
Much quicker than anybody else.
Yeah, that's 5 or 6 seconds quicker than the next best, isn't it?
But
no benefit to him if he hasn't pitted, though.
No.
Well, unless he gets a lap up on everybody.
Yeah.
Dashboards on these cars are also works of art. Very much akin to an aircraft cockpit with dials for pretty much everything. You needed to know about your oil pressure, your oil temperature, your fuel pressure, because you might even have to pump that up by hand.
Manual pump, yes, to maintain the fuel pressure, yes. Yeah. And these are things that we overlook so quickly, of how much technology's evolved, and we've said it already about what trickles down to the road cars. But, the cars that we drive on the road these days, we just take for granted. They're sealed, aren't they? They're sealed for use, effectively.
Open the engine compartment of pretty much any new car, whether it's a small family hatchback or something, with sporting pretensions, and there's a big piece of plastic there.
Yes.
You can't see the engine, and that's deliberate. And there's something in yellow and something in blue, and the yellow is the oil and the blue is the water, and that's all they want you to touch. Don't even have dipsticks on cars now.
Or if it's orange now, it's cables, and definitely don't touch those.
Yeah, that's a fair point, well made.
But I fear for the future for kids coming along from an engineering point of view, because when we were kids, we used to play with rejet the carburetors and play with things like that. The only thing they can do now, if they're really clever, is plug in a computer and remap the thing.
Yeah, exactly so.
Well, you say that with a 10 years long Le Mans connection. When my father came to Le Mans in the 70s, I think 77 was his first one, and I was peeved I wasn't taken.
Yeah.
And so what did I do? Well, I was bored at home, so Dad had good home-based garage equipment, and he always bought spare lawnmowers because he always built them out of bits and bobs and never bought a proper lawnmower. So what did I do? We had petrol lawnmowers. I built and brazed an inlet manifold to make a twin-carb lawnmower.
Yeah.
And presented it when he returned from Le Mans with great pride, expecting him to be so well done, son. And his point was he was tired from coming back from Le Mans from a heavy and emotional weekend with his friends, and basically I'd got no right to use the welding equipment without his permission. So I got told off for that. Well, we had a twin-carb lawnmower. So there you go. Where's that now, John?
Well, yeah.
Well, when he was pushing it, he couldn't keep up with it.
Well, that's the idea, because the father was quite small, and there was a comedy value on it. If you open the throttle, twin carb, I thought it might speed up his... But there was just a comedy value on.
Ian McCarthy says these cars are fantastic to watch, going on for a century old, and they still look very much like sports cars. Real racing intent in the design, and most certainly in the driving. Don't disagree with that, Ian. At RSL_studios, the number 44 is refired, and it's a little bit smoky in the pit lane.
We've got Ovington
That
showing
is the leader as he came in.
Yes.
Well, de facto, we think so, because he hadn't pitted before, had we?
Yeah.
So we think he it may not be, because I still
might be outside the
think
window.
it's Clive Morley.
Well, that's not a happy Bentley at the moment. Large lump hammer.
So mechanics in vintage Bentley racing.
That's fantastic.
Period brown overalls. Never mind Ferraris in the 1950s that were wearing them, but wearing them on the Bentleys here.
So Clive Morley comes through now. This is his outlap. So when he goes back across the line, and he's pushing that car because it's moving around under braking. So he's not just cruising around. And as he comes through the Ford chicane, also wouldn't have been there at that time, he's really getting a hold of that car. Right, this is the run-off pit lane. This is, I think, for the lead. If that's the 44 car coming off the pit lane on the left-hand side, yes, it is. And that is the lead changing right at the pit exit commit line. And we've got 8 minutes exactly now as they go into the Dunlop chicane to try and sort this out. These two cars have beaten the class of the field. They're over, in fact, they're nearly 100 seconds ahead of the next car back.
On the screen, we just had the two of them waving at each other in a friendly manner.
As it should be.
Well, that was a very good getaway. Waiting to see where Mike Littlewood is in the number 50. He's just left the pit lane. That's the bright red YM7165 is the registration number. Oh, sideways moment for our new leader in the 4.5 litre from 1926. This is the number 44, Martin Overington. Confusingly, it does have a number 5 roundel on the back as well. Top speed, nearly 175 kilometres an hour. Heavens.
175k in a car that's, for ease of conversation, 100 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in its 10th. All of them are in their 10th decade, aren't they?
On a billiard table now.
Oh, yeah.
But in period.
The dashboard with the chronograph on the left-hand side in the dark blue number 43 that is in the pit lane. That's Hugh Apthorpe. In a 1931 car. I mean, it's barely worth bringing that. It's so young.
Yeah. Some of these cars have been in the families for years.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
It's a bit like nice watches. You don't own them. You just keep them going for the next generation.
Custodians.
Yes, custodian. Absolutely right. So, oh dear.
Yes, telltale signs of oil leak there.
Oil's supposed to be on the inside of the engine, not the outside, I believe is the paraphrase.
Still to come this afternoon.
Air-cooled Bentley?
We have, no. No. Still to come, we have the first of the Le Mans Classic grids, Plateau number 1, the oldest cars, so some of these cars would be eligible for that plateau.
I think the recreation Bentley that we talked about earlier is in Plateau 1 and not in this.
Is it?
Yeah, but I think,
I do think it's very funny that they've got a modern speed trap at the side of the road collecting the data, and it flashes up so the drivers can see it. But of course, being as it's a modern speed display, because it's over the speed limit around here, it actually says slow down underneath it, which they're completely ignoring.
It's all relative, John. It's all relative.
The guy that's leading is the guy that bought the famous Hotel de France.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Down at
Chateau
de Loire.
Yes, where several teams were based over the years.
Aston Martin among them.
I'm not going to say anything at this point.
No.
I've got a quota of how many times I can use those two words. I don't want to peek early.
You haven't yet.
Justin Bell used to spend his summers there.
Yeah.
And interned, effectively, apprenticed in the kitchen with the then patron's son, who went on to take over the hotel, a wonderful place down there, about 35, 40 minutes south of here.
Yeah, great photos on the walls, ivy growing on the outside of it in a typical French small town square.
It was
marvellous place.
Refurbed about 15 years ago, maybe a little bit more. And Still has 1 or 2 rooms for those of you requiring a little bit of accommodation on your way past, and has a fantastic restaurant.
Yeah.
Always been good. It is right back to its very best now.
David Hobbs had his 60th birthday party there and his 70th.
Oh, did he?
Pleased to have gone to that. We sneaked away from the TV broadcast that year to do that, and he was here for the race 3 weeks ago, and I believe we had another birthday party there. But I wasn't around for that.
Very interesting.
Hobbo raced here many times. Well, who is that? Rafa Nadal is here. He's going to start the event with our platform races later on.
And he threw the flag for the main race 5 years ago, I think.
No, 44 is not looking very healthy, is it?
So this car has been in the wars a little bit.
Yeah.
And this was the car that was in the pit lane, and Martin Overington is on an out lap, was the leader when it came in, but it looked a bit oily, and now it's looking a bit smoky and oily.
Not looking good at all, is it?
Most worryingly, it's under power as well.
Well, I presume Rafa is heading to Wimbledon. He's injured, isn't he, I think?
Yeah.
Just trying to remember.
I was here when he threw the flag, so it was...
yeah.
I love how Martin Overington just made his instant assessment of how bad the oil is by leaning over with his arm like he was on an armchair, looking out at the back and assessing the oil smoke and then carrying on. You can literally see it.
Oh, it's getting worse, isn't it?
Well, he's definitely he's going to pit it anyway. He's going to have to.
That's the end of it, right?
I mean, it looks dramatic.
So with 2 minutes to go,
with a cloud of smoke behind it, but it's it might be something quite simple, just a split oil line. But you can see it's most definitely under power. As soon as it lifts off, it stops. So it's pushing something out under pressure.
Yeah, water and oil. I hope that's not a head gasket. Actually, may not have had a head gasket.
Well, it did look like it was down low, and it did look like it was oil. So that's going to promote our pole position man, number 58, Clive Morley, in his 4.5 litre from 1926 back into leaders, and 1 minute 30 seconds left of the race. Martin Overington was leading by 5.4 seconds there, and will have the pleasure of the fastest lap of the race, I believe.
2018, he threw the tricolour for
the
first for the 24 Heures du Mans, and he will be starting the little bit big man race for the jeune pilote, for the young drivers.
Okay, so on to the final lap, John.
Yeah, and he'll also be throwing the tricolour for the first of the grid races, the plateau races. So through for Clive Morley to start the last 8.5 miles. It should be Nicholas Sleep who goes through in the Super Sports, the number 17 car in second. And it is. There goes Richard Hudson past the start-finish line, the number 39. That's the 1925 car. And he's only 6/10 behind. That's a really good scrap for second and third as they went across the line. The 17 and the 39. David Little has pitted the Super Sport, and James Clark has pitted the 6th place 4.5 litre Tourer. So are there problems for that car, or have they not got enough fuel to do another 8.5 miles? I wouldn't have thought that would be the case. That's another overheating car. No, that's the 44 in the pit lane as well. Great battle going on for second, and that at the moment is just coming out of Tertre Rouge. Those two cars absolutely together. Carlos Selecki in the Super Sport from 1926, similar car, the car that is currently in second, is in 4th position.
That's Richard Beale, isn't it? Who's a friend of Rafa's.
He is an ambassador for Richard Beale.
Yeah.
Rafa is.
Watchmaker to the landed gentry, and a huge enthusiast, and chairman of the endurance committee, FIA Endurance Committee.
Correct.
Yeah, huge.
And has been known to jump behind the wheel of a car himself.
Yeah, I think he is here this weekend. Yeah.
So those two have known each other for quite a long time, Rafa and Richard. So waiting for more cars pitting. Martin Overington, we know, is in the pits. So is this more problems?
Yes.
Brian Rivets just gone back. Sorry, Andrew. Brian Rivets just gone back out again to start his last lap.
So suddenly the 39 car's vaulted up into the second place.
Yeah.
Rafa signing.
So Richard Hudson's just gone by. He was behind Nicholas Sleep when they crossed the line, but by the next timing point, he's gone through and pulled out a 2-second lead. So that's the 3/4.5 litre, now ahead of the Supersports from 1926. Pierre Fillon down there with our VIP guest, Pierre Normin Steerer himself, and is out this weekend as well.
Yeah, you've got a couple of races, I think.
Yeah, because at least two I'm aware of. Yes, president of the ACO.
Very,
funnily enough.
He is a very quietly spoken man and has guided the ACO through what could have been a difficult time and delivered, along with the team, and Pierre would be the first to say this, delivered convergence with the ACO. Scott Atherton.
And with the IMSA. I mean, fantastic they've done that.
With Scott Atherton originally, and then John Doonan, who picked up the baton. And one must recognise the efforts of Gerard Neveu as well, who was previously the head of Le Mans Endurance Management, who organise and administer the FIA World Endurance Championship and the ELMS, and up until recently the Asian Le Mans Series as well. New head of that is Frédéric Leclerc, who's been in post, a little over 2 years now, is it? I really struggle with timings because of the 2-year gap and working out
COVID,
back to things to that. Yeah, the long safety car, which is how Eve describes it, which I think is actually a very sensible way to do it. Well, a bit of showboating on the last lap now for our leader. So there's just a little haze coming out behind that car. And was that tyre smoke?
Oh, beautiful.
It was tyre smoke. A beautiful slide through Arnage, perfectly executed and controlled. That shows you how much torque that car has got, Peter, because he was lighting up the tyres on the short straight down from Indianapolis to Arnage.
And I was just watching it while you talked about Pierre Fillon and IMSA and ACO, and then just watching Clive Morley, our race leader there, and thinking you're not exactly backing it off, you're not stroking it home, but just tells you how at ease with that car he is. Totally one with it. There's only one way to drive it, and if anything, it's probably going to be more dangerous to not drive it the way it does normally.
What a race it's been, and what a spectacle it has been out on the circuit. Benjafield's Racing Club Bentley race at Le Mans Classic 2023, and taken in some style by Clive Morley.
He's still soaring at the wheel, the drift in that car.
He is determined to give everyone a good show. Flat drift out of the final part of Porsche and through Corvette curve. Now down towards the last complex, that being the Ford chicane, of course. Waiting for his braking point. There's going to be one or two people who aren't quite lapped here, so they'll have to go around again. But what a performance. Now, does he lap the car in front of him before he goes through? I think it's the number 59 car, possibly not. So we've got a problem.
I think he will just get it across the line, yeah.
Yes, he will.
Yeah.
Well, that saves a lap for the car he's just passed then. And so the winner in a 1926 Bentley 4.5 litre. That GSU number probably not original.
He knows that car so well. He's developed it. He's raced it many times. Lots of successes. Bentley Drivers Club events, Silverstone, Goodwood, places like that. Legends races, and
it'll be out again at the Times Trophy race at Bentley Drivers Club meeting on the 12th of August, 5 weeks away at Silverstone. I guarantee that. He wouldn't be surprised if he does a hill climb with it in between. Or
probably will.
I bet he takes it to the pub with his trophy in it.
Second place, we wait for Richard Hudson, who crossed the line now, and that will give him second place that he took just at the start of that final lap from Nick Sleep, who's only 8 seconds further back. There was half a second between them as they crossed the line in the favour of Sleep, and Richard Hudson has gone through. So it's the 1925, number 39, that goes into second from the Super Sports in third. Those drivers will be on the podium. Carlos Salehi is in fourth in a Super Sport. And we'll have to wait about another 30 seconds for him to come across the line. Then Neil Davis in Bluebell, number 28. Ewan Getsley in the 47, another 3-stroke 4.5 litre 1926 car. Hugh Apthorpe in the 1931 blower, the number 43. And the top 10 made up of the number 50, the red car, of Mike Littlewood, which faded in the second half of that race. It charged up to the front of the field, the 3 litre from 26. Now, right, how has a car in pit lane just jumped up a position? David Little, James Clark and Martin Overington were all in the pits at the end. So I reckon that Peter Little, when he comes through, he may have been lapped. So maybe he won't get the extra lap. No, that should have had a checkered flag next to him. So Peter Little's going to move up. So is Anna Getley and Guy Harmon. I think they'll all move up, but we'll wait for the official results for that. The number 35 touring back in, and it is a touring style body on that car as well. Slightly further down the field. Car still crossing the line now. And there goes, yes, there we go, that's it. So it's Neil Davis in fifth in Bluebell, then Ewan Getley in the 47, another one of the 3-stroke 4.5 litres, 3-stroke 4.5 litres, then Apthorpe in the 1931 blower, the number 43, as our little drivers get ready, little big mans. There's a bazillion of them this year. Some of them are
90 odd, aren't there?
Some of them are electric, some of them are 2-stroke lawnmower engines.
Beautiful reproduction bodies. Look at that Jaguar XK120 in bronze a bit further back, if you've got pictures.
Yes, it's a 120 because it's got a split screen.
Yeah.
Well, it's only got an aero screen, so is it a 140 or 150 with an aero screen?
Could be.
I'm just being a pedant here.
Yeah.
Shall I just go and get the coffee?
Well, it's
yeah, it'd be a good idea. I'm just wondering what cars Rafa Nadal has. 22 Grand Slam victories. Of course, he was in the lead, all-time best winner, but overtaken now by Djokovic.
Novak.
And that's a fine. If you've got pictures, fine moustache on this. So we're seeing pictures on our screen of
vintage police motorcycles.
Vintage police motorcycles with vintage policemen in vintage police uniform.
Well, you said that I was walking through the paddock earlier on, and all of a sudden there was this cavalcade coming through of 4 or 5 gendarmes on police bikes, and all in kit, and looked around initially because they've got the sirens going, and then one of those things you process really quite quickly for once, and you look at them and thought, hang on a minute, they weren't very old bikes, there was 80s, 70s in reverse order. I thought, hang on a minute, these are not, they're actors or whatever in kit. I'm surprised that they had to run blue lights, but they were on older bikes, and I thought, well, you haven't got any rights actually to go through because you're not real police.
They were BMW twins, weren't they?
Yeah. I think there were 80s on, possibly even 75s.
Yeah.
Rafa has been a Kia ambassador for a while.
So has he?
One of the things he does is he drives a Stinker GT. He's also got an Aston Martin DBS.
Good man.
Oh, well Googled.
6-litre V12.
Well,
a Mercedes-Benz SL55, supercharged 5.4 V8. Ferrari 458 Italia. And
some Mercedes.
Like, well, he'll have won Mercedes, won't he? Because this Punty the Cup.
Is that an SLS one?
AMG GTS.
GT?
He won that in 2015, so he may not have kept all of them.
That would have been a very early GT then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just replaced the SLS.
Hang on, I found a more recent one.
So
that's a lovely
do you
shot.
Get a choice there? Do you take, when you win a tennis match like that, do you take the money or take the car? Do you get a choice?
Kia has sponsored him since he was a teenager.
Oh, have they really?
Yeah. Fine, there's the 458 Italia again.
That's probably worked out well for them then.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Yeah. In fact, there's a Rafa Nadal special edition, apparently.
Ah.
Kia Stinger GT. I do think that's quite an elegant car, actually. So Rafa is a bit of a car plug.
Just looking at these little big man's cars that we're going at. There's a car at the front on the right that I'm guessing is meant to be potentially a Ferrari, but it looks remarkably like a Turner.
Oh, I better have a quick look at that. Why would you do that? It's not on the list.
Well, I'm not sure. Only you can answer why you do that, Andrew. But you are a resident Turner expert, and I don't mean in terms of oil paintings.
No.
We've got a Constable on the team, and now we've got a Turner as well.
No.
I know. I'll get my coat, John. I'll get my coat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Warming up.
Well, I thought the Bentleys gave us a marvellous show. Oh,
well, you know,
Rafa's getting.
There was some proper.
Oh, selfies going on now.
There was some proper racing there. Particularly at the front of the field. There will have been proper racing further down as well. I've just seen Frederick Lequiana in that scrum as well, down there. It is, you know, you've got to say that there's an element of history and an element of getting those cars out to do what they were built and designed to do, which I thoroughly approve of. And that to me is as important as any racing. But we got some racing as well. I think that's the key.
It's funny, I've seen Rafa play at Indian Wells, and I never realised how big tall he is. Because when he's a single guy just on the court there. It's
about 5'10", 5'11".
Yeah.
Must help getting it over the net, mustn't it?
What, at the end?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
you need to be as tall as possible for that.
Exactly.
If you're going to jump the net. And a standing ovation for Rafa Nadal, and I think that was Didier Drogba with them as well.
Oh, was it?
So
yeah, I was wondering.
There'll be a lot of people wanting to take photographs as they are. Now, they are being brought out with a motorcycle escort. And as we mentioned earlier on, Pierre Fillon, president of the ACO, Richard Mille, who is head of the FIA Endurance Committee, as well as his business, making very nice watches. So now we await the arrival of the parade of young drivers. Jeune pilote. And Rafa is going to flag them off before we get to the first plateau. We're live from Le Mans. Good afternoon. It is just after 4:30 on Saturday afternoon, Central European summertime. Andrew Marriott, Peter Snowden and John Hindhoff with you as the young drivers are heading out onto the grid. And there is, Andrew, a huge contingent of these small cars.
Oh, some of them have got perfectly tailored race suits on. Look at this chap here.
Have we got an entry list, have we?
We've got an entry list.
So that was was that Hugo? Yes, it was.
And then they're mainly French. I think there's 3 English girls in there as well. Look at this BMW 3T08. Absolutely beautiful model, isn't it?
I think he had a bit of a Dan Tickton moment there, didn't he?
He did.
Hugo.
Yes, he was going to throw his spanners out, wasn't he?
His spanners out. I'm stealing that. That's fantastic. That is fantastic. Now, this has been a part of this event for quite some time. We see it at various times throughout the year, and
it's a bit more elaborate than the Goodwood Austin A35
pedal car race.
Pedal car race, which is a genuine race, though.
Cetrington Cup.
We're being told this isn't a race.
Now, there's obviously different body styles in there. One that's prolific all the way through is the 330 Ferrari P2.
Yes, seems to be a lot of those.
So I'm guessing there's a sort of mould you can buy that.
Are they self-built or just people?
You know, they look too professional for that.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think they sell. You know, it's toys for rich boys boys.
Good.
Well, this is listed as the Le Mans Classic Academy.
Look at matching crash helmet and car in bronze.
Lovely.
This one seemed to have a bit of a problem.
Which one?
One of the cars had its rear bonnet or boot up, which I think is where the engine was. Here's this lovely Jaguar. Look at the little leather strap on it as well.
Down to a wood-rim steering wheel.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, Porsche 911.
These knees right up around.
Aston Martin.
Ish.
Yeah.
Mercedes.
5 Volante.
Right, so...
Full 917 Porsche.
Yeah, the 917s I've not seen before. There's a Salzburg coloured car at the head of the field. The Alpines look particularly good.
Yeah, in a spider form.
Yeah.
Open top. Notice the 917 wasn't open top. It did have a door button. Look at the roof. Actually get inside it. Note is open.
I noticed quite a lot of them are entered by Team Richard Mille, so he must be involved in this heavily.
Yeah, quite a lot of these are children of drivers who are in the event. Which is
the same as the Goodwood Day 35 race, the pedal car race.
So but children were welcomed in on Friday, and yesterday and today they had their administrative checks. They had a bit of practice on the Alan Prost kart circuit on Friday afternoon. Then they had a practice on the small track this morning, and now it'll be a parade with the Le Mans start.
Looks like we're going to have a scooter race as well.
And they'll be having another parade and prize giving in the exhibitors' village on Sunday.
Well, we said Lotus 6. You'd never seen Lotus 6. There's a pretend Lotus 6.
A shrunk in the watch.
Yes, exactly. 2 weeks ago, to Flywheel, of course, we had quite a lot of three-quarter size, weren't they?
Were they 3/4 or 7/8? I can't remember which way. No, it was 3/4. You're right. Yeah. Electric powered, which were very rapid.
They were.
Ferrari Daytona coming out as well, and again, this is going to take a wee while to get everybody lined up. Are there really 97 of them?
Well, there is a number 97, and I'm trying to see if there's a number.
I'm not seeing any.
There isn't a number 13, but there doesn't seem to be any other.
96.
96.
There are some cars in there that are listed as baby sport, which are there for not. But just run down what I've got here. A Matra 1969 M650, Ferrari 330 P2, Shelby Cobra, AC Cobra, lots of P2s, a Morgan Plus 4, 328 BMW Cabriolet, Peugeot 302, Bugatti T55, DB Le Mans, Porsche 356 Coupe from 1957, 328 BMW, Alpine A220, Porsche 911 3.2L, that was the convertible, the black car, a D-Type Jaguar, XK120 convertible Jaguar, Ford GT40, Porsche 917K, Peugeot 402, Lotus Mark 6, Porsche 550A, did I mention the Alpine? Alpine 220, T35 Bugatti, Dodge Charger.
Dodge Charger,
yes.
That, yeah.
And indeed Caterham Super 7, Alfa Romeo Alfetta 158, Tipo B Alfa Romeo, Bugatti we've mentioned, Ford Mustang, MGA 1500, Shelby Cobras, 365 GTB Ford Daytona, Ferrari, 250 California, and I think that's it.
Yeah, Peter's having a little look at what's the age range. Some of these kids look only 6 or 7 years old. I think it's only 7 to 11 or something like that.
7 to 12.
7 to 12, is it? Yeah.
But the idea being that it's a Le Mans style start. Obviously takes place, as I said, under standing ovation. Give them a good bit of hype as well for them. Internal combustion or electric engines, miniature replicas of models that were made to run in this race.
What?
But it is not a race.
It's not a race.
Just say it's not
How
a race.
many times do you think they've been told this? It's not a race. Type 35
But-
Bugatti coming out.
But
Their own description says it is not a race, but be aware. Beware. Our miniature drivers will still have to wait to know who's the best amongst them.
All right.
So, it is,
So it's
there
being
is-
judged.
There is a competitive element. Yes.
Right, so it's being judged. I hope those that have two in them, like the
What?
number 68 Alpine, rather like the VW Fun Cup, they're in a slightly separate class if you take a passenger in the 25
it's
hours.
going to make a huge difference with the weight, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Very cool dudes and dudettes
they are.
down on the
dudettes.
pit lane.
Yeah, look at their race suits.
Brits, they all get a race suit.
And the goggles as well.
See, I think open face with goggles is great. There's somebody with a Valentino Rossi helmet further down, and that. Now, what is that?
That's the Dodge Charger.
That is the Dodge Charger.
Dodge Charger, number
And I
46.
see that now. That's fantastic.
Yes, with a V8 in it. No, it's not an electric, but it has got a proper engine.
Oh, period crash helmet on this
Young lady.
And
If I get the number on that, I'll
well,
tell
that
you
looks
who
as
that
if it's got a
is.
lawnmower engine in the back of it. I think the lawnmower engine's died.
It's that looks very much like a Honda 4-stroke in the back of that, which is much beloved of arrive and drive karting as well, or at least was. Just mentioning that Alexander Rossi helmet, he will be competing. He won a race here at Le Mans 3 weeks ago, and the hot take is that he will be back in the GT3 category, provided BMW get two cars into the race, which is by no means certain, or is it? Scooter helmets a go-go down on the pit lane. Fantastic.
What a memory for these kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Been running since 2008.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
The number 48 was cool as a cucumber. That's Alice Lecouf in the Ferrari 330. Didn't see which car was alongside there with the additional driving lights, just in case it goes into the dark, which I thought was very, very clever. The 60 is Marion Sautré in the 328 BMW, or one of them. Really packed grandstands on the driver's left. The Alpine is the number 68, and that's Angèle Janson-Jacot.
I mean, these are absolutely
Lucky kids,
beautiful
thumbs up.
models. We're getting close-ups of these, really ground close-ups, and they're just beautifully made. They're absolutely exquisite, some of these models.
What chassis there? It'd be probably be a standard chassis with a body thrown over the top of it.
I wonder if they're all made by the same people or whether it's
Think
different
so.
manufacturers.
Augustin Moreau in the Ferrari 330 P2
Had a look about him, didn't he?
did.
Very mature look for his age.
What Augustin Moreau. That's a racing driver's name right there.
I do say future champion.
Augustin. Well, if this sparks the interest of these youngsters, then it's done its job. And they're going to be waved off from their positions with very 1970s numbers on the grid signs. Sort of Porsche hippie numbers. And we have some period motorcycles as well at the front. Quite a lot of these cars running a driver and a ride-on mechanic, including the number 31. That's Moira Tashumi from Switzerland in a Porsche with assistance. On his own, that's the Type 35, that's the 68. That was the young man we were talking about earlier on.
Does look
So
a bit
who's
like
in the
a turn.
Charger? So who's in the 46 then, the Charger?
So the 62, which we thought looked a bit like a
Turner.
Turner, so that's meant to be an Alfetta 158 stroke.
Okay.
No, it doesn't look like that, does it?
The Dodge
I
Charger's
think that's a replacement. Sorry, John.
Yeah.
No, sir. The Charger is driven by Riley de Roche from France. See, I'm saying if this is me, even 5-year-old me is saying, I don't want a passenger, So give me a monoposto, please.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I don't need any extra weight. Very chilled out in the number 92 Bugatti.
William Hoots in his T55. Oh, just laid back.
Chilling it.
Yeah. Chilling it,
bib.
Just bossing it.
Yeah, he was visualising that.
Yeah.
I do like the number 20 as well. That's Maddie Gurr, excuse me.
Is she from the UK?
Yes, but that wasn't the Jaguar, so I think that's been swapped out.
I was going to say, that's not a D-type, was it?
No. Matt Rasimka always looks good on the straight at Le Mans, the number 30.
With the Pescarolo colours, the green stripe on the front.
Paco Dupin.
Also notice that the pit girls with the pit boards are dressed in sort of 60s period Bieber type dresses. There is Pescarolo. I'm not sure what he makes of it all.
I'm sure he loves seeing his car's colours. Now, it will be a dash across the track. They say the other thing about having a passenger, your passenger's got to run across as well. So if you've got a passenger, you want it to be, you know, mini Usain Bolt, don't you? You don't want them just ambling over. You'd be saying to your passenger, now don't do a Jackie Hicks on me here. I want you across there.
And I think to add to that, another layer to that is that I suspect that some of these passengers are siblings and sibling rivalry. We know what happens there.
Yeah.
So, you know, things could be made.
Being an only child, I didn't have to deal with that. So there's another thing.
They've all got matching green and white race suits.
Yeah, they come with the territory.
Yeah, they must do. Come with the deal.
Stan 21 supporting this for a number of years now. So that's 5-year-old me saying, look, I don't have a brother and a sister. I'm on my own. I want a monoposto car. I'm not taking a passenger. Thank you very much.
Hey, nicely, John.
No, Johnny doesn't share. At the front of the field is the Porsche, and
Lella Burkhardt is going to be driving.
Yes. Right. Named after Lella Lombardi, obviously. Yeah. I just made that up, by the way, just in case anybody from the family is listening. The 22 is a very, very lovely Mercedes.
So they've even painted the number with the red with the black key line around it, just as Mercedes did back in.
Even though it says Porsche 356.
Yeah,
I'm looking at thinking, I don't think a Porsche 356 looks like that.
No.
All right, stand by. We've got the gendarmes on their classic BMWs, and we've got a number of other classic bikes as well. So, actually, there's a number of classic gendarmerie bikes. The absolute concentration. So some of the passengers are in fact not just passengers, they are documentary filmmakers.
Oh,
for the TikTok.
With a smartphone.
For the TikTok.
Filming her run across the track.
Yeah, and
for the family album, for reviewing on Christmas Day.
Oh, look at this.
The kids come in a lot of different sizes. Getting them all sort of concentrated, ready to run, might be a bit difficult.
And the full face helmets always make them look like Jim Bamba cartoons.
Yeah, they do.
When I used to do cadet karts, the first time I commentated was on some cadet karting at Felton, which is still there but no longer used. And I laughed so much because I could absolutely see where Jim Bamba, God rest his soul, got his inspiration from. So 100 million children and 96 cars, 95 cars, we think. And what could possibly go wrong here with some petrol engines, the electric? See, and the other thing, you want the electric because it's going to give you the instant torque.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's going to be a few tears
before bedtime.
Yeah, I think so.
Tears before supper. Stand by. Go, go, go.
Well, they're running quicker.
That's extraordinary. Yeah. Oh, hang on, we had a Jackie Hicks halfway up the field there. Never mind looking at the camera. Get your foot down. Get your foot down.
Off you go.
Here all day.
Don't worry about it. Just dive out.
Find a gap. Find a gap.
Just go. That was far too nice.
It's a great road drive.
what an image that is. Come on.
26 wide. Got the chalk out. I think he might have. Just flooded that.
I think flooded
now the motorbikes are slowing them all up.
This is going to be nasty. This is going to be carnage here as they start checking up. Now the Morgan pulls away.
Oh, the Cobra hasn't gone. That's about the last one. Look at the roll bar of it.
Fantastic.
If you can see on...
Oh, look, the SL's got working headlights. Fantastic. That is absolutely magnificent. That is family album stuff. Oh, we've got a Porsche. Well, that can't really be a Porsche because it's broken down. Oh, look.
Oh,
good go.
Yeah.
Stalled it.
Pulled the
starter, banged it back into gear.
Well, starter was a lawnmower starter.
Yeah. Pulled the starter, banged it back into gear and off. Caterham 7.
That looks like a full-size Caterham.
With a very large person in it.
Exactly.
That Caterham is brilliant. Caterham have got some very exciting stuff coming out shortly, actually. Looking forward to seeing that.
New owners, aren't they, John?
Yes. A new management team at the top with some very, very good people.
It's got a new retail outlet with HWM at Walton-on-Thames in the UK.
Yeah.
That's new, long been Aston Martin there.
Bob Lashley's gone there to oversee it.
Aston and Caterham now, so interesting brand synergies.
He knows which way's up. And even if it's not the power that was expected, the number 56 Bugatti is going to get to the end of the race and gets a round of applause.
Grandstand's absolutely packed.
Yeah,
well, there was a sellout today and a sellout yesterday, apparently.
Well, yesterday was bonkers. Yeah. Yesterday, if you'd wanted to come yesterday, by the middle of the afternoon, you would have needed some liquid soap and a shoehorn to get yourself in. We've got a Ferrari in trouble. And fortunately, Ferrari assistance is there. With our young ladies. Excellent stuff. Absolutely brilliant. What a highlight for all of those drivers and passengers and for the people who built the cars. Really enjoyed that. Now we've got to get them off. Oh, track limits. Track limits on the inside of Dunlop there.
It's not a race, remember.
It's not. What did I say?
Nobody told them.
It's not a race. We've got somebody
pushing along
paddling along with that
Bugatti.
hand
Yes.
on the Bugatti, but it's not a race.
Well, it's not outside assistance, it's fine.
No.
He's leaning outside of the car to assist himself, but it's not outside assistance. It's still within the car.
Now, if we can get rid of the motorcycles and somebody can take a nice shot of them coming under the bridge.
With the 23, as it was, homage, 917.
Yes.
23 leading, as it were, for the centre of
that
shot anyway. Bugatti Type 35 has
See, the thing is,
died.
When you look at it from a distance, if you just sort of glance at it, you just see lots of cars going under the Dunlop Bridge, and then you see a scooter going past, which appears to be 27 feet high.
The kid in the BMW 328 is trying to push the motorcyclists along, who's waving to him to slow down.
Too small.
We had a 911 Porsche on the grass.
Obviously.
Bouncing along it.
Flat.
Must have been, it's Kevin Estra's son, that's what it is. Well, on the grass.
Yeah. I did notice that
Sorry,
car
Kevin.
had knobbly tyres on it. And I was going to mention that earlier. And I just thought, why has he got knobbly tyres on that? Well, now we know. Very good.
Oh.
This is just... Whoever came up with this originally, more than a little golf club, peeling off onto the Bugatti circuit, on the banked right-hander.
And there's been no contact yet.
Well, you haven't seen what's been going on down the field. Wait until the steward's room later. Wait until the steward's room later. See, even the little pit-paddock monkey bike looks huge next to these. That is just genius. Absolutely genius. Thoroughly enjoyable. We're live from Le Mans, if you haven't decided. Haven't realised. Let's go back to the start of the children's race. Almost 100. Really good getaway by the BMW in the middle of the pack, but it was the Matra Simca that got away. Porsche was 917K, 917K was a little bit slow. And, yeah, tell him it's not a race in that Matra.
But the marshal, when they set off, they're slowing down. We're like, no.
I'm in the lead now.
Counterintuitive.
Absolutely, I'm in the lead.
You sell it to them as future champions and then surprise when they go quickly.
Watch the number 32 Matra here, because that gets off the line brilliantly well. I think that was Thomas Jacob in that car.
I'm not sure they're all to the same scale. What do you think?
No, I agree.
I want to know how they get into some of them. Because some of them have sort of basically...
Look at that Morgan. It looks just like a Morgan until he climbs in.
Yes.
It just looks slightly further away. Now, who was it in the 15 who was very... That was Leonie Pierre in the Bugatti. And she was in the car and ready to go straight away. She had it fired. But she was very honourable and let people through. One or two waving at the crowd on the way through as well. And the Bugatti at the back. The number 56 needed a little assistance for Cesare Geoffroy, excuse me, the T35. Just, I think we need a commentator's race in these.
Yeah, I wonder how much...
Commentator's not a race. Commentator's not a race, obviously. But
Welcome
it would
to
be
RSL Comedy Hour.
But it would be a race. Martin Haven looks like that when he gets into his Morris Minor.
Yeah. He's climbing over the top, NASCAR style as
absolutely.
well. Welded doors.
Yeah, welded doors.
Stiffness. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Lack of roof, weld the doors up. There you go, Haven.
I'm only kidding, Martin. I know he's in
No, we're
at
not.
the moment.
No, we're not. Weld the doors up, Martin. Go on, NASCAR in.
Definitely a commentator's race. Definitely a commentator's race. Now, the Little Big Mons has been replaced by our first of the plateaus, first of the main grid for the 2023 Le Mans Classic. Now, these are the earliest cars that we are due to have this weekend.
Now, we mentioned a little bit earlier on that we've got more cars assembling on the grid. This is Plateau 1. One of the cars, a white, lovely 35 Bugatti. But next to it is, I'm going to say Aston Martin, for a very, very simple reason, that it's LM4, LM standing for, you get it, Le Mans, one of the works Le Mans cars. And it's driven by no less than Darren Turner.
Yeah.
Driving that. So we mentioned earlier about keeping people driving different types of cars, Fiskin, etc. Darren Turner excelled in his Endurance Legends race now, and then into LM4.
So, for the earliest cars, we go back to the beginnings of the Grand Prix d'Endurance and our first race for what are termed the pioneers, Richard Mille and Pierre Fillon at the head of the grid. Pierre Fillon, the president of the Automobile Club de l'Ouest, the guardians of the sporting regulations and for Le Mans, which effectively makes them the guardians of sports car racing. The FIA may slightly disagree about that, but frankly, it all comes back to Le Mans. On pole position, the Haluza and Ames Alfa Romeo 8C 2300 Spider Zagato. And an absolutely gorgeous piece of kit in that almost blood, dark, sort of semi-congealed blood colour, a sanguineous red, which is one of my favourite colours. In second on the grid is another Alfa rather, another Alfa. This is the 8C Monza 2500, LM 1934. Then we have Albert Otten in a BMW 328 Roadster from 1939. Amazing that BMW were producing cars like this one in 1939. It proved to be an inspiration for many other manufacturers who took some of the styling cues. A Talbot, or Talbot, the number 2, Gareth Burnett, the AV105 from 1937.
Gareth will drive that car and Birch will drive the other. They're not sharing.
Right. Then it's Charles de Villecourt in a Bugatti T51 from 1927, the number 35 car. Alfa Romeo for Frederick de Vust, an 8C. Aston Martin Ulster from 1936 for Edward Bradley. He's the first of the OS6 class cars in 7th position, 42.
He's sharing that with his son Richard. Richard, I think, will start it, and he was telling me earlier he might do all 3 races.
Bright green for the Talbot. I've got a bit further ahead.
London-built cars, and these could be very competitive. They have one that in 2018, I think they had a 1-2 here with Burnett and Birch.
They took this race very, very seriously, didn't they?
Oh, yes.
Andrew, back in period Talbot. Or Talbot.
Well, Talbot, I think, because it was a British car. There's a French Talbot, which is different.
Yeah.
And there's been some merging, but anyway.
The Alpha is so low slung, isn't it? It's almost like it's been channeled, to use a custom term, but it's just sitting, it's hugging the ground, that Alpha.
And watching it through the paddock the other day, earlier on actually, and I thought, I don't think it could be anything better, could it improve its looks, until I heard it drive by.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you got me at start-up.
The 8C won this race 4 years running, remember?
It's quite a successful car then, and with its appropriate badge as it should be, Alfa Romeo Milano on it.
Yeah.
Try getting one of those now if you can, one of those original badges.
Really?
Yeah.
And 8C standing for?
I see competition, I think.
Yeah,
yes,
correct.
And we must watch out for Robert Kaupman's car, the number 9 8C, because that is the actual car which won in 1934 with a Tasselin and Giannetti at the wheel. Rob was 10th in it last year.
Right,
this is another of these team cars.
Another the bright green Talbots.
Yeah, Burnett is just a reserve driver. He won't be driving that, I doubt.
Still cars pulling in further down the grid. Again, a monstrous grid here in the best possible way of 83 cars.
So can you say that again, John?
A grid, a barely acceptable grid of 83 cars from the first decade or so, including at the back, and we will see this, I'm sure, the number 48 in OS3 is the Arnaud Faure Chenardin Walker, the 3-litre from 1923, of the mark that won
the first race. Yes.
The running of the race. Of course, there was no trophy for that race because it was a biennial cup. They wanted the Rudge Whitworth Club, wasn't that something like that? They wanted people to come back the next year, and eventually they decided it was probably a good idea to have a prize-giving ceremony every year. the ACO have done a fantastic job down through the years to ensure the survival of this race through all kinds of trials, tribulation, World War, tragedy, of course, after the 55 disaster. And they really have done this race proud and ensured that it has continued to be the endurance motor race in the world. Bugatti T51 in 5th position from 1927 is the number 35, rather darker blue with the white and orange stripes on. Stripped out interior, very much a car that had sporting pretensions, the Type 35, Andrew.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I think Bugatti could be in the mix in this race. I suspect it's going to be a Talbot Alfa Romeo battle, but watch out for the Bugattis. Also watch out for the Bentleys, because that recreation Bentley we talked about, Peter, is in this race rather than the previous one. So Stuart Morley this time will be driving, son of Clive, who we just saw win the previous race, together with the journalist Andrew Frankel, who's got a long history with these sort of cars.
He certainly has, but I don't want to beat the Aston Martin drum too much. But I'm going to mention the Ulster that's there in 7th place, the red Ulster. Ask me why they were running red at the time. Why were Works team cars running red?
Why were they running red at the time?
Because they were run by Bertelli, who ran the Aston factory at the time. So he used his national colour, even though they were British cars.
So it was Italian
colour. It was a
racing
nod to
red.
his heritage, yeah.
Very good.
But who's at the wheel of that car? More to the point, not just because it's an Ulster, which is a pretty special Aston Martin anyway.
Yeah.
But it's got Richard Bradley at the wheel, who's pretty tidy in anything.
Anything.
But, historic racing have recently been driving a Sauber.
Yeah.
Just for fun, Group C car. But of course, is top driver in LMP2.
I won the class here,
Yeah.
6, 7 years ago. Yeah.
Another darker red Aston is in 16th position. This is the 1936 Speed model. Now, what's the history of that, Peter?
Well, that's just a various. It's slightly quicker. They can be up to 2 litres those as well. So that's run by Robert Blakemore's driving that car, who actually runs a Curie Bitelli, who's one of the preeminent Aston specialists in Olney, up in Buckinghamshire. And those cars are just those evolutions. He runs LM4 as well for Jonathan Lupton, who just bought that, who's got Darren Tony. I think Jonathan Lupton's driving the car, from what I saw there.
Rob Kaufman.
Rob Kaufman's Alpha,
Yeah,
from the 1934 winning car.
By the way, I think Olney's just in Northamptonshire.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to look it up now. Okay. As a resident of Northamptonshire, you're going to own that one, aren't you?
Well, it's got to be not It's half.
Stand by, caller. Stand by, caller.
It's halfway.
But what I will say about
it's
it's one of those few places that has not one but 2 Aston Martin specialists.
Yes, it does.
A Curie Batelli for pre-wars.
Yeah.
And Desmond
J. Mills
Well,
took over the old Rover garage.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of
Yeah.
the high street. It's got a fantastic workshop behind it as well.
Yes, I know, but you drive through the high street and all of a sudden you see a DB5 or something behind a plate glass window.
Yes.
You think, okay, pays to advertise.
We saw some mini BMWs. We do have the BMW 328 Roadster in 24th position. That's a 1938 car. And they just keep coming. The Lagonda LG45 from 1937. Amazing to me, Andrew, the differences between the styles of these cars. You've still got a 1937 Lagonda looking very much like the early to mid-20s sit-up and beg Bentleys that we saw earlier, and around it you've got these low-slung sports cars.
Yeah, these weren't designed by computers, John. They were designed by a man with a pencil, and different men had different ideas of what would work.
No, very, very
Look
rarely.
what's next
look at
to
Riley.
it. A Riley TT Sprite.
Yeah.
You could not get, and that's exactly the same year as the Lagonda that it's alongside. The blue Riley is tiny, it's lightweight, it does have, of course, a smaller engine, but massive contrast there, Andrew, between those two cars.
I've driven one of those, actually, a long time ago. I can't tell you what it's like, because I can't remember. But I knew a chap who was actually, I remember his name, he was called Clive Blissett, and he had the Treen-bodied version of one in Derbyshire. When I was about 20, I drove the thing. I don't know where I drove it, but it was somewhere in Derbyshire.
I can't imagine anybody sitting here with me in however many years' time saying something about, oh yes, well I owned a Hillman Avenger.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the same.
No.
I owned 2 Hillman Avengers, not at the same time.
Who knows? You had two Hillman Avengers.
I had one after another. I had a 1300 2-door Super and then a 1600 Special Edition.
You didn't go for a GT then?
Couldn't afford it.
I had an ex-works rally car.
I know you did.
Avenger,
I'm very envious of that. Where is that now, Andrew?
That got crashed, that car, quite badly. The aluminium roof did fall off it.
It's in storage.
Oddly,
It's in
as it
storage.
wasn't any kind of load-bearing device at that point. So
No, you gave
suggesting
us a
that
bit-
everything was thrown on around the roll cage, and the roll cage was much more of a space frame.
It was an ex-factory car. Can't take the blame for constructing it the way it constructed. It was a good car, actually. Would love a little Avenger. So, much underrated car.
Totally agree.
Oh, Delage now.
Delage might be coming back, of course.
They
were on the E-Deck at Le Mans. I-Deck, excuse me. At Le Mans. And
had the Delage badge on it.
Correct.
And not sure of the exact history of them coming back, but sounds good to me.
Nick Manassian involved with I-Deck Sport. And
William Metcalf.
Who's the one who's pioneering these synthetic fuels in the Bentleys, very involved in the Benjafield Racing Club. Benjafield Racing Club, Mr. Bentley man.
Fantastic T35 in a much lighter blue. Time to clear the grid as we are ready for our first plateau of the weekend.
All the girls on the grid in their 1960s mini dresses have got matching white rimmed dark spectacles on.
Yeah.
Or sunglasses, I should say. There's a lot of attention to detail here.
Now, what's that up in the sky? A pair of radial engine biplanes. We need our friend Steve Slater, and we wish him all the best
recovery.
Working with us at Flywheel when he took ill. Steve and Jane, we wish you all the best and hope to see you restored to full health, Mr. Slater. I hasten to add, we did not work him into his illness, and we pass on all of our best as the aircraft flying overhead.
Well, they got radial engines, haven't they?
Well, yes, that bit even I could work out.
Oh, they're obviously matching.
Stearman's, maybe?
Yeah, could be, actually.
Somebody's going to tell me on RSL_studio. Now, things are about to get very, very serious. Rafa Nadal will flag these cars off, then they'll reform, as we saw with the Bentleys earlier on today. But remember, this is the first of 3 races, and your results and your times are added together to give an overall Le Mans 24-hour style result. You'll have one today, one tonight, or overnight, and one tomorrow.
John, as happened with the Talbot last year, you can have 2 really good races and win them, but if you have a problem in the other one, as I think it was Gareth Burnett's car did, he actually left the fan on and it drained the battery. He couldn't finish the second race.
Well, but doesn't that, Peter, sort of evoke the endurance spirit that you've got to get the car to the end of the meeting, the end of the third race?
Entirely, it's exactly what you should have been doing. Just very, very quick, we've got a 3-minute board coming up, so just squeeze it in if we can, John. You mentioned during the Big Little Man race about being the inner 5-year-old in it. I just read a tweet from Richard Bradley, no less, who's put up that great day yesterday at Le Mans Classic. P7 overall in the Atten in Plateau 1 quali, which is out there now. Yep. P2 overall in the gorgeous Maserati 250S of that'll be Richard Wilson's car, and Plateau 2, and fastest in both wet night practices. ... and then a little addendum. And having more fun than a 5-year-old at Christmas.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Yeah. What a character.
Good man.
Exactly. Good man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are around the world, thank you for joining us this Saturday afternoon for our first race. This is another 43-minute race. And
well, the first of 18 of these races.
Correct. Now we get in about an hour late, to be honest. This should have been running about an hour ago, i.e. the traditional 4 o'clock Le Mans start. But the rain this morning rather put paid to that. And fair play to Patrick Peter and the ACO. Sorry, that was Patrick Peter at the front of the grid earlier on, not Richard Mille.
Oh, get your helmet on.
So, fair play to them for ensuring that everybody got their time on the circuit as our aerial fly past greets the drivers and the cars for the traditional Le Mans start. And again, as Andrew was mentioning earlier in our broadcast, it gets a little bit quiet and a little bit serious as the drivers wait for Rafa Nadal, who waved the tricolour on the full race, the 24-hour race here in 2018, to pick up the French flag. There's the 1-minute klaxon and the 1-minute board. 30 seconds will come next as the planes come through over the top of the Ford chicane rather than through the Ford chicane. And there will go across as the tricolour is in hand with Rafa Nadal, much to the amusement, enjoyment of those gathered on the front straight.
Just a quickie, John. Last year's winner was Duncan Pittaway with Tim Dutton in a Bugatti T35 from 1925. I don't think he won any of the 3 races, but he did well in all of them.
And that's the key, particularly in these era of cars. Get them to the end of the 3rd race on Sunday and claim your prize. Ready for the start. Was done away with after the 1969 race. The dash across the track. I love how everybody's actually watching, and Rafa has to move as quickly as the people on the podium as the champagne's been stripped. Fantastic start from the middle of the field, and the Alfa gets away. The 2nd place car, the BMW 3rd place car, did not get away very, very well, and still has not got away. Albert Otten in the 328 Roadster, somewhat recalcitrant to fire, and everybody moves off. Now
it's a Bugatti at the back, covered 2 other cars not moving.
The 78 is way down the field.
Riley MPH, isn't it?
Yes. And
pushed off at the pair of them. 77 and 78.
Yes. So they now are mobile. But again, remember, effectively, this part of the race is under yellow flag.
Well, you say that, John. I think I've just seen green flags waved.
Well, it's. I wonder if they did it differently for the Bentleys, because it's normally over the top of Dunlop and down into this part of the circuit.
That's why I was questioning it. Yeah, I'm sure.
I know, we've got a safety car. No, it was yellows. I thought I saw a flash of yellow. We have a safety car, so they will form up behind the safety car after the Le Mans start, so we're not quite competitive yet. And indeed, the clock has not started. So the clock will only start when they come across the line at the end of the formation lap. So let's have a look at the grid again. Alfa Romeo 2300 Spider Zagato from the Monza Alfa Romeo, then the BMW and the Talbot, the Bugatti and the Alfa 8C from 1932, Aston Martin Ulster in up in a decent position there in the top 10 with the AV105 from 1934. The top 10 made up by Stephen Skipwith and Thierry Stapt's Aston Martin speed model, the T35. There is quality all the way through this field. Paul Sittert's in class, Darren Turner in 12th, the Aston Martin from 1930. Going further down the entry, two Paul Sitters in 49th and 50th place. Yes, that's what I said. Simon King in the 70 in the Morgan 4.4 from 1938 leads the OS5 class. OS1 is the Paul Hugo Riley Brooklands from 1928. It's number 19 car. Pierre-Etienne Lambert is the TSRC3. Paul Sitter in 57th position. It's the HRG 1500 from 1950. That car in 57th position. And those are your Paul Sitters in the field. In a packed field that goes, I mean, it's called the Pioneers, but it's covering a pretty big time frame when things were moving very quickly in the automotive world. Yeah. 10 years, you know, what's happened in the last 10 years of motoring? Well, yes, we've had a bit more electrification. Go back 10 years before that, what happened in those, not much really. Whereas these 10 years in the early life of the automobile, Andrew, were absolutely packed full of innovation and invention.
Huge in every aspect of the car, in the suspension and the engines, everything. And I think you're absolutely right. It seems to have plateaued out these days, doesn't it, John? Also, John, you mentioned the Chenard Walker, because it won in the first race here. Gerard Larousse, our former winner, now 80 years old, is certainly down to drive one of those cars. Looking for number 48.
Oh, already a problem, I'm afraid.
7 Ulster of number 14.
Where's the driver?
Eric Suter.
Well, it hasn't got there on its own.
Was he leapt out and done a runner?
Yeah. I think that may be the case. So the traditional Le Mans start with the lifting of the flag, not the dropping of the French tricolore. And a bit of Mortimer Wise in the middle of the...
I spotted that earlier, yes.
In the middle of the grid there. The two Alphas from first and third, massively good getaway. And the BMW in second, I'm afraid, for Fritz Burkhardt. For Albert Otten in third. The two Alphas from the first row of the grid, effectively. Just didn't get away at all. Not sure.
It helps when you've got a door to open and close, or just a door to climb over.
That's a cutout, yes. Would you dare leave it with the ignition on before you went away? What have I not done? Ah, now here's some... Now, not period correct, but I have no problem with that. Very good. Further down the field, climbing in to some of these cars, as Peter rightly says, far more difficult than others.
I did mention two Riley MPHs, 77 and 78. They weren't actually. 77 is an MPH from 1933. 78 is a TT Sprite from 2 years later. So my apologies to the owners of the Sprite.
So we now...
guessing it was an MPH.
we now, at the Daytona chicane, I think are just reordering the grid to go back to where they qualified. The dash across the track was completely
academic. I was just about to say that, but and also there's a little bit of jeopardy involved in doing that, because it's bragging rights, yes, and there's something about it. I've always said about that thing about 24-hour races, qualifying on pole. Well, it's kind of irrelevant in some ways, or how important is it when you imagine the investment in the engine that goes in to do that? Go and start a race like that and just clip somebody else or break something or
horrible.
drop a clutch on a car too old like this. I mean, we've advocated before this now with some of these older cars should have rolling starts just to save on the transmissions. But the view tends to be amongst the owners. Well, it's been suggested as is it kinder to them because of the age, and the owners' entrance views and preparers is very much no. That's how they raced in period. It's down to driver skill. It takes something away by having a rolling start.
What we have seen at various circuits around the world is that there is now often what is called a classic circuit, which is far less heavy braking, which I totally agree with. We've got it at Silverstone. There's a couple of opts there, isn't there, down towards the corner that's named after that motorcyclist chap, Rossi. Valle, that's right. Vale, of course.
Don't forget, I'm old enough to remember that the original Silverstone, when it was the Coys Festival.
Yes.
And Silverstone, before it became the Silverstone Classic, the old historic Silverstone was flat through Abbey.
Yeah.
And I can tell you now, flat through Abbey in a Group C car.
Bit twitchy.
It focused the mind.
For the car and the driver.
Yes.
Yeah.
Certain parts of the anatomy, yes.
I can imagine. The Coys Festival, actually, pretty much was the precursor to what has become IMSA Radio, and in fact all of the internet broadcasts, because that is where we hatched the idea to put the broadcast on the internet.
It was also Christie's, wasn't it? Which way round was it, Andrew?
Christie's first.
Christie's first, and it became Coys, didn't it? Yes.
I was on the organising committee of the Coys Festival for many years and ran a big art gallery.
I didn't know that.
He's done everything.
I know. Of course he did. I was trying to get.
And then actually,
I was trying to bring him in with the segue.
Actually, Chrysler then sponsored it for 2 years, I think.
In the pit lane, we have a car with a big number 9 on the side, but I actually think that's the number 8. Rather confusingly.
I think you're right, because 8, it's a Bentley, isn't it?
It was a Bentley.
Well, 9's an Alpha 8C, 8 is a Bentley 3-litre Super Sport.
Yeah.
That's the Selecki car from Argentina.
Oh, really? So is that from the previous race?
Yes.
Then?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
It's still there. Okay, well, that was only a bit confusing to a commentator with a small brain like mine. At RSL...
Well, no, it's in this race as well.
Oh, it is in this race as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, yes, from this grid, yes.
Yeah. At RSL_studio, the lights on the pace/safety car have gone out, but they're only at the second chicane as the... is it Martin Halusa in that car? I think it is.
Yes, it is. And he'll be handing it over to Alex Ames, who's the guy who manages all Halusa's Halusa family's marvellous collection of racing cars.
Nothing new. Still weird to warm the tyres up on that Alpha.
Can you imagine that job?
Nothing's new. Yes.
Just saying about Alex saying, can you imagine what a job that is to look after some guy with an awful lot of money and his family's racing cars, and be involved in also racing them yourself?
I think you could classify that as a first world problem.
Yes.
I think I'd agree with that.
There's tougher days at the office for most.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what you were saying about the design, just seeing, if you can see it on your picture, the BMW looks so modern, doesn't it, compared with all the cars around
328?
it? Yeah, the 328, there's another one there.
It looks miles newer. And now we've got another Bentley problem. This is one of the Bentley blowers in the race, whilst they're still fettling. Excellent. They've got a screwdriver on it. They've got some gaffer tape.
Which they didn't have back in period.
What, a screwdriver?
No, gaffer tape.
You got him there, Joe. You got him there. Yes, hook, line and sinker.
Yeah.
Landed him.
Also I'm afraid, is the number 14. I saw that earlier on. That's Eric Satur's Austin 7 Ulster from 1931, the little polished metal car. Not silver painted, just polished metal. Oh, now, pushing a Bentley slightly uphill. Cars were lighter in those days, but that's still not an easy task.
3 marshals, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a 4 or 5 marshal.
That's a weight session in the gym.
That certainly is. So,
but Peter said it, these cars are almost 100 years old. Of course they would go wrong.
Yeah. And they've been sitting around longer than they were expecting as well. Although I suppose after the morning session, when we had a little bit late for the lunch, people would have expected them to be a wee bit later. Slightly confusing in that we've got green flags waving, and have we, in that case,
have we started? I think we have.
Has the safety car pulled off?
Well, its lights are off, certainly, but
well,
they weren't on in the first place, were they?
But we haven't started the clock yet, so I presume the clock will only start when we come round at the end of this lap. The drivers will be at the briefing, of course.
That's Richard Bradley really trying hard.
That is the number 29 car going through Arnage, with Richard Bradley on board. And leaning over out of the right-hand side. That machine, how far down is he in that car?
Of course, the BMW 328 also built in the UK under a different brand of Fraser Nash.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
So, I don't think the timing hasn't started yet, though, has it? So.
Well, not on that screen. I'm just going to refresh everything just to make sure.
No, I've done exactly the same. I've got 2 different screens. You've got Alcamel and the T71 here going, and it's both on static at 43 minutes for the duration of the race. So nothing going at the moment.
So we're in a bit of a holding pattern before we come to the line. The BMW lead car, let's call it, because it's effectively pacing this fabulous grid of the oldest cars we got, the pioneers, as it's termed. By the way, congratulations to whoever produced the fabulous programme at some 180 pages.
Richard Bradley is not driving, but his dad must be, because there is Richard in the pits.
That's Robert Blakemore and Steve Skipworth alongside,
And I think that the Halusa car, I think it's Alex Ames, that's his crash helmet.
Okay.
So I think he's starting it.
Alex Ames with the Brazilian flagged helmet then on that car. Right, we are going to get started now. With the two Alphas at the front, the Spider Zagato and the Monza 2500, and behind them then the BMW and the Talbot 3 and 1, the Bugatti number 35, although it's a T51. That's not confusing either, is it? And the 8C, another 8C, common isn't anything those, aren't they? 2300 LM from 1932, that's the 86. Then it's the Aston Martin Ulster from 36, that's the number 42 car, and the Talbot AV105 from 1934, the number 15. That's your top 8, first 4 rows. And after the theatre of the dash across the track and the Le Mans start, this is the first of our plateau for the pioneers, going all the way back 100 years, and we are racing for Le Mans Classic for 2023. A nice clean start at the front of the field with at least the first 7, 8, maybe 10 rows pretty much together. There was a wee bit of a gap after that, and here comes the BMW round the outside. Albert Ogden, the 328 Roadster, the 1939 light cream coloured car, trying to make a move, but it was a fabulous run by one of the bright green.
That's a Burnett car. Burnett it was that moved into second place. Yeah.
And already BGH 21, the Gareth Burnett AV105 Talbot from 1937, challenging for the lead. Then the gap back to a very different looking BMW that's either shedding a bit of fluid or was just throwing something out of the exhaust pipe there, because that right-hand rear is where the exhaust exits from the back of the 328. In the pit lane, still problems for that Bentley from the start of the race, and now through Turp Rouge for the first time.
Oh, it's blown up.
The hand has gone up from the leader. Oh, that's disaster for the 8C, for the car that was on the front row, and he's going to tour that to a halt. Through goes the BMW into second, then the Bugatti T51 goes through in the third, and that is a crime Oh, and he's on the wrong side of the track to easily get that recovered. Well,
I think
that's
it's a famous car. It's a Mila winner.
Correct.
And, yeah, Targa Florio winner. Oh, what a disaster. And so Talbot in the lead. Built in London. Cricklewood, I think.
Second place, the BMW. At 3 seconds. Now, what happened to the other front row Alpha? The 2500 Le Mans from 34. Fritz Burkhardt's dropped all the way down to 5th position. That will be a net 4th with the problems for the other front row starting car. Big move down the outside by the number 17 Bentley. He's having far too much fun.
Another car we thought was the other Talbot, the Michael Birch Talbot, should be up there, and I can't see it. We've got a Talbot, another of the team cars
We've
there.
got Burnett and Birch sharing that first.
Yeah, well,
car.
but Michael Birch is driving another car, and I expected him to be right up there, and he's not.
Is he driving with Max Sowerby in the 15 car?
No, he's not. That's a separate car again.
Right. So
maybe he'd had a poor start or something. Well, watch out for a green Talbot coming up through the field.
40 minutes to go. And the leader then, the Talbot AV105, into the pit lane.
Oh dear.
This is very early on. I think that's straight off the end of the formation lap. And that was the Tractor A28 from 1929, the Patrick Bourdet number 74 car.
And the track is just full of pre-war racing cars. Look at this.
It's magnificent stuff, yeah. Down towards Mulsanne corner for the first time, and the leaders have already gone through, and it is the number 2, Gareth Burnett, who leads in the Talbot, the BMW second, the Talbot, another one of the Talbots in 3rd place. So Max Sowerby moving up, Frederick de Voost in the Alfa Romeo 8C 2300 from 1932. Well, whatever was ailing the Patrick Bourdet machine, he appears to have got that restart. A tiny little Tractor A28 from 1929, that's TRA-CTA, not Tractor.
We had bigger cars in the little man's race.
It is tiny, isn't it? So nimble. There was 2 schools of thought though, Peter, earlier on, wasn't there? You went big and had a huge engine, and therefore you needed a big car around it. Or, Andrew, you went light and small and nimble.
Absolutely, the Lotus way.
Yeah, which would come along later.
Yes.
Well,
absolutely correct.
Totally under-engineer everything, wasn't it? Because it was one thing that Colin Chapman was
fall apart as he crossed the line.
Over-engineering.
Yeah.
Just interested to see how Richard Bradley, Dad Edwards, is getting on. I'm sure he'll pit that and put the sun in fairly soon. Well, as soon as they can, I would have thought.
4 minutes time before the pit window opens, so probably the end of the next lap for some of them, the end of this lap for the cars at the back of the field. You might actually be able to drop in and do a pit stop early. There is only a 15-minute window, so you can't afford to miss this.
See Kaufman in the car which won here at Mons, lying in about 12th place. I believe he owns part of the Ganassi racing team, actually. Certainly did.
That's the number 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Race winner from...
Yeah, that's sitting down in 17th position for Rob Kaufman, but 11th in class, as you rightly say. That's another Alfa Romeo 8C from 1934. JJ 93 on the Talbot cars, 15 in 3rd position, and has just gone by, or he's having a good battle, should I say, with Frederick de Voost, who's right there in the lower slung, dark red Alfa Romeo from 1932.
Well, we're side by side now as they come out of the chicane. And they are side by side. Interesting to see if there's a bit of waving for the Alfa to his pit.
That's them saying, come in at the end of this lap, I reckon. That's them absolutely saying, do not miss the pit next time around.
Now, that little rare French car that we saw, the tractor you were mentioning, we'd think would have a Frenchman driving it. Name was Surf. The chap comes from Tampa Bay.
Oh, of course he does. Of course he does.
Yeah.
Ever driven anything this old, raced anything this old, Peter?
Not yet. Well, not great.
Wait a minute.
Well, I've driven years ago because Dad had a 34 Ulster years ago, a long time ago. So I've driven that, but no. But something has been mooted, and I'm just. Best the best way I can say is watch this space. Well, I have asked for the pedal coming on the right there, the accelerator pedal, just not to confuse me entirely.
And hello to Revs Limiter, cheering on Akuri Batelli. First race of the Le Mans Classic. Great bunch of people and some amazing cars. Some very great engineering goes on. We were at Mr. Heritage a couple of weeks ago, and extraordinary to see the skills being preserved. Still this battle going on for third position. Up ahead, the silver BMW is disappearing into the distance by around about 9-10 seconds, and this battle for second. And then there's another BMW, that's Jean-Jacques Bally in the number 24 BMW, also in silver. With even then the beginnings of that distinctive kidney grille that carried BMW for such a long time. Bugatti, Type 35. It's the number 12 car, a little bit further down the field.
Well, this type of car which won this race a year ago.
Yeah, very unusual that we have two races back to back. But with the centenary of the Le Mans 24 Hours, too good an opportunity to miss and to get this fabulous event on the odd years. It's normally been held on the even years, but putting it on the odd years. Already a bit of lappery going on as well.
Yeah, little MG being passed by the Bugatti.
Another dark red car. The Bugatti looking much more like a racing car than, say, one of the... And I don't mean this in a bad way. The Talbot looks more like a Tourer. And
absolutely.
The Bugatti is stripped down, barely even has any wheel guards on it, and there's nothing in terms of creature comforts, Peter, for the driver. Almost an open cockpit either side as well, with no cockpit sides. There's nothing there that doesn't need to be there. And then you've got the BMWs second and fifth at the moment, which actually, do you know what? That still looks quite modern. There's Pete, there's Morgans that turned out like that.
I was just going to say, it's not a big jump to a Morgan.
No, it's not.
No.
I think I know which one I'd have of the two, but I think it was the referring to the Bugatti as what was referred to as weather protection.
Now, you were talking about headlights earlier on, Peter, with the Bugattis, and I think the Talbot have got either covers on the headlights or they've turned them round.
See, taking it seriously.
Turn them round.
Leading the race.
Yeah.
See, I'm not wrong.
5 miles an hour, that's worth.
Well,
yeah.
Could well be on one of those, actually.
That's the leading Talbot AV 105 from 1937, Gareth Burnett.
Yeah.
A huge eclectic mix of cars coming across the line further down the field, but all racing for class positions. Here's your class leaders. Gareth Burnett leads in the OS 8, OS 7 in second place overall is the BMW, the number 54 of Albert Otten. The Bugatti T51 in 8th position leads OS 3, that's the number 35 car. Then two class leaders in 14th and 15th, Ian Standing in the Riley TT Sprite we saw earlier, the 1937 number 23, and Ian is just ahead of Stuart Morley.
We've got a car stuck at pit lane pit entry, which is the TT Sprite number 78 of Thierry Chanon. If he's driving it there, Marshall's gone out to that car now, but that's an awkward place to be stopped.
Stuart Morley then leading that class, the OS4 class in his Bentley Blow, the number 17.
Now, for those of you who are able to watch on the screen, you're watching an Alfa Romeo with a Ferrari badge on the side, I think. You can probably explain, Peter.
Indeed, because the Scuderia, which was run by Alfa Romeo works team in this period was run by some chap called, remind me.
Enzo Ferrari.
Enzo Ferrari. That just,
Amato Ferrari, wasn't it? Because he runs everything else.
He went on to do quite well, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they did run with that Ferrari.
His cars are still winning here now, 100 years on.
So he was a team and an entrant rather than a manufacturer at that point.
Correct.
Yeah.
Although he was a very successful driver in his own right, and no, I'm looking at this from memory, not on any platform. The prancing horse was actually an award given to him by a count or somebody for winning a race, which was a large statue,
Yes.
and it became his good luck symbol. Something along those lines. Now John's the keyboard boy. Look at that. That was like watching Elton John on the piano, the way he went to the keyboard.
I haven't gone to that now. I thought it was something to do with a fighter pilot and his race.
It is something.
So that
off
was
the hill.
Right. Okay.
I believe there was a statue or a trophy. That's what and he handed it to him as for winning the race, for being so special, and it was deemed because of his status as a fighter pilot or whatever, that he was he held it in such esteem that he used it as his emblem, as they are to this day.
We were doing class leaders, and Jean-Luc Lafay in the Amilcar from 1926 has just pulled out. That's the number 56 car. That's leading in OS1. And there was a couple of other class leaders that I didn't mention because of the problems at the pit-in. Simon King in the Morgan 4.4 is leading OS5 in 70th position, and Darren Turner is leading OS2 in the Aston Martin LM4 from 1930. It's number 29 car in 29th position. And with what I told you earlier on, then you have the full set. Now, anyone who's coming in now is in too early for their pit stop.
Just very quickly there, John. Actually, Darren Turner's in the pits, so it's Jonathan Lupton in the car, the owner of the car.
Got you. Thank you. So there are people pitting now, but the pit lane does not open for your statutory and mandatory pit stop until 44 minutes and 5 seconds past the hour. And right now, we're at 42 minutes past the hour and some seconds. And I say and some seconds because I can't quite see that on the screen. Besides which, we haven't had race control telling us it's open at RSL_studio. And if you want to get in touch with us on Twitter, or in keeping with the age of the event, you could send a message by carrier pigeon or a telegram. Twitter, I suppose Twitter is the modern equivalent of a telegram, isn't it? Short amount of characters that you can have, and
it's the same thing. It's the principle of communication. The platform is just different.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Right. Correct.
Watching the Talbot now.
Through the second chicane.
Yeah, and you can clearly see in the pictures we have available to us, the headlights are turned round and backwards and pointing up slightly.
Yeah.
And it just hearing it go past there, it sounds crisp and on song. It's no wonder it's leading the race. But a car that's that old is beautifully prepared and turned out.
In the number 55 is the Bentley 4.5 litre Tourer. This is the Bolleur car. Also, with its UK registration, its original UL 4357, but also Zurich plates on that car, as its owner comes from Switzerland. That car sitting down the field, but cruising around in absolute style.
Just going back to the Talbot, not on our screen at the moment, it had very rare for those, it had a 7-bearing crank.
Wow.
And revved to over 5k, so a compact engine. But the big thing about it was it had an 11.4 to 1 compression ratio, unheard of in those days.
Very high.
And it worked.
So how many cylinders was that then? To have a 5-bearing crank?
7-bearing crank.
7-bearing crank, rather. So 6-cylinder engine?
It must be a 6-cylinder engine, yes.
Wow.
Now here's another very unusual looking machine. If you have your pictures, the Delahaye.
Oh yeah, the 1936 sort of aero covered. Think of a single-seater that somebody's thrown a sheet over the front end, and then basically they fashioned the wings around the front of that.
It does look like it does like a Grand Prix car under a cover, doesn't it?
Yes,
storage.
Exactly right.
But in period, people used to race their Bugattis with the wings off and race them in single-seater racing, race them in sports car races with the wings on.
No, another. Is this the
Weather
same?
equipment they were called. Weather equipment.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it was quite late on when the regulations started talking about open and closed wheeled cars in terms of Grand Prix. And you know, Grand Prix, let's not forget, the World Championship only started in the 1950s, and that was when the Grand Prix regulations began to get distilled a little bit more. Before then, you had Grand Prix, the grand prize, and it was, you know, you would race them sometimes to Formula 2 regulations, you would sometimes race them to World Sports Car regulations. The words Grand Prix just meant the big race of the weekend or the event normally.
Well, you could say it wasn't exactly embryonic by the 1950s, but it was certainly still evolving quite a lot. We were still only sort of, you know, 50, 60 years into the motor car.
Overheating Bentley in the pit lane.
Rather like the oil that should be inside the engine, the water should remain inside the radiator.
And in the engine block.
It cools it better that way.
I think you're probably right.
A big crew of mechanics down there, didn't they? Those brown Bentley. Wasn't about 6 of them working on that particular car.
Pit window is now open, so at the end of this lap, who did we put in the leading car, by the way, to start with?
Burnett.
It was Gareth
Burnett. Yeah.
Well, he's just put in the first sub-6 minute lap around here. So this this is a car from 1937.
Yeah.
1937, from before the outbreak of the Second World War, and we are lapping at 5:59 for an 8.5 mile track. Now, it doesn't take a genius to work out that the average there is up over 60 miles an hour. Well over 60.
Now, we've just been treated to a little bit of a close-up in, I'm not sure which car it was, but it was right inside the cockpit already, but in old-style, almost patina painted on the dash,
yes,
were flag signals, or flags for the driver to understand. Now, we mentioned earlier about the red and white one being what we used to call the oil flag, now being slippery
Red and
surface.
yellow, yes, yeah.
Well, the moniker alongside it said debris.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, as in a very good way of pointing out to a driver of, if everything's going to make you slow down, there could be debris on the track, not just that. But I love the red one at the bottom, just said, game over.
Did it really? I wonder if that was period correct. Max Sowerby is in, and he's the first one in from the top cars. He's coming from in the 15 from 3rd position. This is the second of the Talbots that's in the top 3 at the moment. The earlier car, the 1934 car. So Max in the pit lane, and followed him by Steve Skipworth in the Aston Martin, and Jean-Jacques Bally in the 24, the BMW, which has lost a couple of places there, actually, on that last lap, Andre.
Yes, it has. More pit action with the Alvis here, which is currently in the pits. I haven't mentioned Alvis much. A company that's still making cars, actually, recreating from parts cars that they built ages, more 30, 40 years ago. But Gareth Burnett, I just wonder if Michael Birch will drive that car now that his seems to have failed. I don't see it anywhere on the timing screen. So we expected the Talbots to be 1 and 2 with Gareth Burnett and Michael Birch up at the front. So we got the Fabry Dutton T44 Bugatti now in 3rd place. Dutton having won this race a year ago, but in a slightly younger, older Bugatti, I should say. And the Blakemore Armstrong Aston Martin, I should say, is in 4th position. So many different makes up there. But we are getting excited about Richard Bradley getting into the family Aston Martin. I think that will be stopping very soon. It's down in about 20th place at the moment. So very sweet sounding. We can hear the Talbot just sounds so great, doesn't it? That engine with its high compression ratio.
That was massive. Absolutely massive in those days to have that 11 plus compression ratio.
There's a fantastic book called George Roche and the Talbots. He was the Swiss designer. These are British cars, but they were designed by a Swiss guy. And it's a heavy tome, I have to say.
Your point there, John, is more than valid. Of what was the compression ratio?
11.2.
11.2, 11.4
of that era. That's almost double the norm.
Yeah.
That was 6, 7 was punchy.
Yeah.
Probably a bit less. Diesel engine's a bit different because you've got a different compression ratio because it's
compression ignition. Yeah.
Compression ignition and an oil as well. People always forget to diesel oil actually.
Yeah.
And no spark, but.
The new Bentley is in the pits with a problem, I noticed. Stuart Morley.
Just down there. That's the car that was overheating, I think, earlier on. So BMW coming to put a lap.
What's the phrase? They don't build them like they used to. Sorry, we shouldn't. That's probably very unfair to the Bentley. But
that car was raced at Donington earlier in the year. And
it went very well, didn't it?
Yeah.
Went very well. Also getting, it's 22 Celsius out there, and the track's at 28. The track's as warm as it has been all day today after the downpour this morning. So the BMW, Albert Otten's BMW in second place, the number 54, with now 32 seconds between himself and the leader. The battle is between third place Aston Martin, number 31, and fourth place Bugatti, number 20. Just 0.2 of a second between those two cars. And the 31 Aston is just coming down to the Mulsanne corner right now. Problems. Crossing the white line on pit exit for the number 21 car on its outlap from the pits. That's Eric Hamanchow with the T37 Bugatti from 1926.
That's our lady driver, isn't it? I've seen her racing.
Katarina?
Katarina, yes.
Katarina Karaoke,
yeah. Is she from Slovakia or something?
Yes, certainly Eastern.
Yeah, I've seen her racing at Monaco Historic.
Down at Mulsanne corner, more action with the Alfa Romeo trying to hold on to. Actually, that isn't an Alfa Romeo. Excuse me.
Ulster Aston.
The Ulster Aston. I'm sorry. I'll get my coat. I saw the dark red and was suckered into it.
Yeah, it is, but you can tell it's got that unique shape of the boat tail.
Yeah, lovely.
But also flat because it's got the spare wheel laid flat in it.
Yeah.
To get its lower centre of gravity as well. And one of the big things you can tell on an Ulster is as well, it's one of the early pioneers of colour coding.
Is that so?
Because the radiator grills aren't polished.
Ah, yes,
the
good point.
headlamps are back because it saved chrome and weight.
Yeah, very
so
good.
They were painted at the time, all for performance.
Isn't that interesting? Because of course we had Mercedes-Benz here running with no paint on at all, and more crucially, not the lead filler that you would put on before the paint to make the bodywork look decent. Through Indianapolis, then, this battle, which is going on between this is the battle we were talking about, the Aston Martin Speed model, Robert Blakemore and Francois Fabry, battling for third and fourth position, nicely picked up by the truck. Hello to Olivier and Natasha and everybody in there. And Simon is our audio engineer today. They've been keeping us up to date with everything that goes on, whilst we get to sit here and wax lyrical about cars. We can't do that without the excellent work that they do across the weekend, and it's long days here. And we particularly thank our camera operators as well, who've had everything to deal with today.
And doing a great job. Getting some great pictures here.
Just fantastic. If you aren't watching at the moment, everything will be available via download on the archive. And you can go back and watch last year's races as well. And it's all via the Patrick Peter part of YouTube. We've got the links at radiolemans.com as well. And we'll have the audio archive as well. So, for those of you who are burning a bit of data at the moment, listening to us on your phones or your connected devices, a lot easier to get connectivity here this weekend than it was at the Le Mans 24 hours. Thank you very much for tuning in, whether you're at home, here at the track, or further afield, whatever you're doing today. But we will have Tim Gray is our engineer and exec producer back up in London, and our archive will be growing throughout the day as well. Number 10, Bugatti T51. That was the car that was quite well up, and that's looked like it had a problem, but then has restarted. The battle for third continues, coming to the line.
In the pictures, we saw
to the pits, yeah.
great examples of positive camber.
We did.
Particularly, well, the Bugattis always run it. I don't know why they do, but.
Well,
As you were saying, we
it was
didn't
the thinking at the
work.
time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's how it was, and you know the famous famous BRDC badge is of a car with positive camber, and the car is of course an Aston Martin.
Yeah. Well, we've got Aston Martin coming in now.
Is it something to do with the roll centres and the springing at the front that works differently from independent suspension?
I think very much so, and live axles.
Yeah, exactly so.
Exactly, yeah. Something I did notice on that Aston Martin you mentioned earlier, John, some of the Bentleys in one of our previous, and the ones in this one, and other cars, and the Bugatti as well, often had their number painted in period onto the radiator grille.
Correct.
The Aston that's come in there of Robert Blakemore and Nigel Armstrong there, it's also got grills over the headlamps, as in stone protectors, but they've also painted in the AM logo.
Yeah, I saw that.
Period. It took me a real to spot it, but beautifully done. Nice little touch there.
And that's a period correct detail, is it?
Correct,
Peter?
absolutely.
Yeah, it is very nice.
He looks disappointed, and he's sitting up there on his Delage. Just saw the shot.
Who's the Delage that's in the pit lane? Then
Joel Laub.
yes, probably. A lot of people pitting because we're coming to the end of the pit window, and in and out for the number 78. Both of our leaders are in the pit.
Pit window's closed in 2 minutes, John.
I've just left the pits, so I just wonder if Max Sowerby's managed to get round and take the lead. He was about a minute behind them. Yes, 2 minutes, Peter. Thank you.
It's showing that the Darren Turner-Lupton Aston Martin has not pitted yet.
Well, that is the number 29. He's just coming out of the Porsche curves now as a class leader. So as long as he drops in now, I think he'll be fine. That'll be almost perfect timing. Very pretty blue.
Riley, isn't it?
Riley in the pit lane, the number 77. And that's Louise Alvinat in the Riley MPH from 1933. Some of these cars are absolutely tiny. They're really stripped down. You can see how the thinking evolved here, Peter, to say, you know, add lightness. You were talking about the Lotus thing. Add lightness, and let's. It almost looks like the cars are just molded. Yes, there's 2 seats, but barely.
Yes.
And it's just, Peter, moulded around the driver, isn't it?
Well, I think the whole point was lighten and add strength.
Yeah.
If you had to lighten to nothing and add strength where possible, or where necessary.
These BMW 328s are fantastic, aren't they?
They are. And we mentioned how well it looks now, how well it presents now as a car looking then. That's a 1930s, late 1930s car that came out, and it still looks. It must have looked amazing in its day, because it still presents really, really well. A Bugatti, though, I've got to say that beautiful teardrop shape of Bugatti, just absolutely.
And the sound. There's Darren Turner now is got into the number 29.
That BMW, just classic shape that goes on and on and on. Just under 2 litres, 1971 cc. And talking about that compression ratio as you were before, 7.5 to 1 there for around about 80 horsepower. And in a car, I mean, they were in production from 36 to 40. They built fewer than 500 of those cars.
This is the 328s.
Yeah?
Yeah.
830 kilograms. Or if you're in America at the moment, 1,830 pounds.
If I am right, it was built in the UK as under a badge of a Fraser Nash, wasn't it?
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
Also influenced the Bristol as well, didn't it? The 400, which BMW supplied engines to Fraser Nash as well. And that 400 was heavily based on the BMW.
I think that association with Fraser Nash and BMW continued into the 70s. The 2000 shape, you could still get one with a Fraser Nash BMW badge on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
wow.
Quite what the connection was. I'm not sure. I shall look it up tonight.
Pretty sure that Richard Bradley is now in his father's Aston Martin Ulster, because I'm just looking at the split times, and he's quicker than anybody around him on certainly sector 1.
The shutters have come down, by which I mean the pit window is closed.
Yeah.
And therefore, anybody that's got a 0 next to them on the timing screen, you can go to livetiming.alcamelsystems.com/Peter Auto.
So Michael Birch obviously didn't start his Talbot, must have broken, so he is now in the lead car. So this is Michael Birch with his Rubens Barrichello helmet on.
Yeah. So as we said, it was Gareth Burnett.
Yeah, it was Gareth and now it's Michael. So one of their 2 cars has broken, so they're going to share it after all. It wasn't the plan, because I did discuss it with him.
So working the throttle through the uphill right-hander before Dunlop and the chicane. Just blipping the throttle, trying to rotate the car. Nothing but the best for the Bentley, by the way. Getting Evian into the radiator. Now, still getting a bit of front axle tramp. And there's one thing on that car, I do like that Talbot very much indeed, but there's one thing that is irking me massively.
Go on.
You know what it is?
No.
The front number plate isn't straight. It's just slightly down at one end. It may have just rattled off a little bit.
I've got the answer to the Fraser-Nash issue.
Go on.
On mine. It was the owner of Fraser-Nash was so impressed by the BMW 328 when it came out. He arranged for them to be imported into Britain and become the importer for them. So 42 were brought over to the UK and converted by Fraser-Nash into right-hand drive for. Hence it was allowed to be called the BMW Fraser-Nash or Fraser-Nash BMW. And of those, you see, right, 42 were made and 24 of them exist still. Which is not bad for 70-odd years ago, is it?
Half of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did that organisation then go on to sell Porsches? AFN?
Ooh.
I thought they did. Might be wrong.
Well, AFM were a massive Porsche concessionaire when that word was popular. Yeah. Let's go through the class leaders then. Gareth Burnett leads overall by 35 seconds and leads his class in the Talbot AV 105 from 1937. Albert Otten is second in the OS7 class. He's second and leads the OS7 class. That's the BMW we've been talking about, the number 54. In 12th position is the Aston Martin Ulster from 1936, the number 42 car, leading its class. The Stuart Morley Bentley Blower from 1930 in 17th, the number 17, leads the OS4 class. Thierry Stats in the Bugatti Type 35 from 1926, the number 50 in 20th position, leads its class. Darren Turner has just gone out in the Aston Martin LM4 from 1930, leading the OS2 class. And let me go through. Simon King and Pierre-Etienne Lambert still locked together, leading their classes in the 70 and 71 car in 37th and 38th. That's the Morgan and the HRG, both leading their respective classes. And the final class leader is in 68th, Jean-Luc Lafay in the Amil car, which despite a slightly hesitant start is still running. And those are your class leaders now with just under 8 minutes to go.
So the Talbot, Burnett and Birch still lead. So Otten going so well in that BMW 328. Then the second of the Talbots, and then the second of the 328s, and then Skipworth and Dean in that Aston Martin. But I think we're getting some pretty sparkling laps coming from Richard Bradley. Already moved the car up 4 or 5 places. And Richard has, I think, just done the fastest lap of the race at a 6:13.972. So Richard Bradley is flying, as you'd expect a professional racing driver to do, but also one that's known that car since he was a small boy.
Yeah.
He still is a small boy. He's a small boy age-wise, but he's a tall, small boy.
He's so enthusiastic. I love him.
It's brilliant. He drives everything quick, as Snowy said earlier on. Very good in contemporary cars.
He could drive a wheelbarrow quickly. He could.
Yeah. I'd let him do my shopping. He'd get it done quicker because he'd have a broadside round every corner.
Topical.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to 1932 when he could first buy an Aston Martin Le Mans for
the princely sum of...
£650 new.
Well, I presume it was guineas in those days. Obviously, Mr. Snowden.
Yeah, imagine that. And it's
How much was that? Did you say six?
£650.
Right. That was more than my father paid for our very first new car in 1971.
Yeah.
So that was an expensive car.
Yeah.
That would have bought a street of houses where I came from.
But it was a 1.5 litre, dry sumped, bear in mind, twin SUs on it. It had a standard, a self-starter.
That was quite unusual.
Yeah, quite unusual. It did have the off handle if you wanted to.
As well, yeah.
And a 4-speed gearbox.
Also quite
All
unusual.
absolutely standard. So quite a piece of kit at the time.
5 3/4 minutes to go, and BJH 21 is still going its way around parts of the circuit with that front axle bouncing around. Does not seem to be slowing Gareth Burnett down at all. I think that's when he's just on the brakes.
That's Michael Birch in it now, isn't it?
Sorry, yes, it's Michael Birch. My apologies, yes.
I think he's coming up to lap one of the other Talbots, which is a later design, actually. 2 or 3 years later. A white car, you might see it in a moment, but...
So do I presume, Snowy, with those headlamps facing the wrong way on the bar at the front, that when it got dark, you just flipped the whole bar and they turned around and dropped under the bar rather than sitting over the bar?
Like table football, just turn it over.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just flip it. Mechanics could do it from either side, couldn't they?
And I presume it's got some kind of quick release.
But age-old rules of endurance racing: stay out of trouble, stay out of the pits.
Yeah.
Minimise everything. Just turn it, flip it all over.
I'm sure the wires are connected at the moment.
So they've got the side lights that would run anywhere, and it's got brake lights as well on the back of the car. And so when you were getting into darkness in the race, you wouldn't do this on your road-going version. As you came in and you were getting into darkness, they would turn those around, and you would fire up the headlamps.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to remember, some of these cars, I've seen it on some of these older cars of this period, the 20s and 30s. Sometimes they had separate switches for either side. You'd have a side light at the front, so rear lights separate, because headlights left and right sometimes, and not necessarily dip and main. Why? Because they were so inefficient and unreliable. What you'd need to do sometimes, it was safer to drive at night with just your rear lights, so nobody could run into the back view on the roads and on the track, but not run the lights at the front. It was safe. You didn't need to see where you were going.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Question mark, and maybe one more for luck.
Now, that brings us to, with 3.5 minutes to go, a very interesting question. We're not covering any of the night races, but Le Mans is not lit, Andrew, and therefore it is some of the corners have some overhead lighting on them, but the majority of the circuit is pretty dark. Now, we are in the middle of the year, and the days are still quite long, but overcast overnights is going to be very dark here, and these cars, you have to have you're not allowed to put LED bulbs in or anything.
Absolutely
like that.
not. You've got to run. No, a very good point, John. It's going to be quite tricky doing that. Not like a current LMP1 car with fantastic lights. No, but not going down a straight quite so quickly with these, are you? But no, I think it's going to be quite challenging for them. It's a good point.
Hence, there was.
And you're absolutely right about it being so dark here. I've spoken to drivers. I've done the Daytona 24. You know, that's not a problem racing in the night. Well, it's not dark in Daytona for the 24, is it? There's lights everywhere.
Yes. Still handy to have lights.
Yeah.
I may have maligned that front number plate. I'm not sure it's quite askew with.
Well, I think you have, John.
Yeah,
I think we need a spirit level here.
I'm taking it back.
Okay,
I think maybe I was watching it just when front axle was vibrating a bit too much. Unless it's vibrated back.
I think it was the camera angle deceived you. Optical illusion.
That's a fantastic looking car.
He certainly rows it along well, doesn't he?
Well, both have driven it very well indeed. And as ever, the mechanics waiting for their charges to come back around here, though. You've got 6 minutes rather than 3.5 minutes to wait. And race control have advised us that this is the last lap. So the leader the number 2, going into Mulsanne corner right now with a handy 30-second lead. Let's look for some battles for you. Behind then, the BMW in second. Second to the Talbots in third. Another BMW 328 in fourth. Then the Aston Martin Speed model from 1939. That's the, I think that is Stephen Skipwith in that car now, because he was standing in the pit lane at the start of the race. It'll be Richard Bradley now in the Aston Martin Ulster. Now here's a bit of a battle. Klaus Dold and Fritz Burkhardt in 2 Alfa Romeos. In fact, they've just changed. Fritz Burkhardt has just gone through. The number 6 car now takes 7th position ahead of the 85.
Got a Bugatti parked at the side of the track there.
Doesn't look happy.
Well, looks driverless to me. Shame to have got this far and literally in the final lap is just retired.
John, a couple of weeks ago we were at Bicester.
Yeah.
And there was a chap called Pellet there, and he was so-called racing a tricycle.
Yeah.
He's in this race.
Yeah.
In another Talbot.
Talbot's really very, very impressive in this race. Down to Arnage.
I mean, he's trying, isn't he?
Well, listen to the throttle. Pumping the throttle to get the car to rotate, to try and kill the understeer there, Pete, on those skinny front tyres, because you can't really get the weight transfers you would on a more modern car.
The eternal search for grip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Front end grip he was looking for there.
But on the power, feeling it until it bites, you can turn it in, then transfer from understeer to oversteer.
Yeah.
Catch it, get on the power, and eventually get some traction.
Michael's racing a GT40 here this weekend as well as the Talbot.
Yeah, well, he's I think he's sold out of his company, which is incredibly successful, supplying massive cranes around the world.
Yeah.
And he was here omnipresent at in United Autosport. He's bought an LMP3 car. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
So the Bugatti, by the way, that was stranded by the side of the track was the 81
I think it was the 81. It did say
Mathieu Chagnoux. Yeah. It was a Type 35, so that would seem reasonable. Right, last couple of corners then for what has been a fairly dominant drive with yellow flags at the Daytona chicane and at Mulsanne corner. That will not bother the leading car, as the Burnett Birch, it wasn't meant to be the pairing, but they had problems with the other car, so they have played nicely and shared their toys and win our first plateau race here at Le Mans Classic for 2023 in the Talbot A V5 from 1937. A great run to second place by the Albert Otten BMW 328 Roadster from 2 years later, and the last checkpoint was 23 seconds behind and goes across the line now at 23 seconds behind, and then next up it should be
the Sowerby Talbot.
Here
it's coming, look,
yeah.
JJ93.
Great number plate. Blip, 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 blip on the throttle. Not quite as extravagant as our winner. 2 Talbots on the podium. And in fact, actually, that's a first and second for the Talbots in their class, because Max Sowerby's, Max Sowerby and Gareth Burnett are in the same class. Albert Otten in, hang on. There's been a penalty applied to the car that went across the line first, because it's dropped down to 3rd position. That must have been a pit window infraction, because the BMW is now scored as the leader by 25 seconds.
Yes.
And
I didn't see that.
I
thought it came in the window. There were some penalties for crossing the line coming out of the pits as well. Might have been one of those.
I did not see that. I apologise. Certainly the lowest number I saw was the Jean-Francois Dumasseau Bugatti, which is the number 5 car. So I'm not sure that was a pit window infraction. However, the BMW 328 then takes the first of what are 3 plateau races for these cars. That's a great start for them. And
so what was the penalty? A minute, wasn't it?
It was a minute.
Yeah.
Exactly so.
And, well...
So Max Sowerby is promoted to second in the second, what was the second Talbot, but now wins its class and second overall. The class positions are what going to count here, and the race time, of course. And so the car that crossed the line first is now relegated to third.
Well, also, let's spare a thought for the fantastic Alfa Romeo, which stopped early on with Ames and Alex Ames at the wheel mark with the Halusa family car, which we thought would be right up there amongst the front running, because there's nothing to stop people repairing the car
and getting
and racing in the second and third races, but they'll be out of the overall order.
Alfa's in 7th, 8th and 9th position, 4th, 5th and 6th in class for Klaus Dold, Fritz Burkhardt and Francois Fabry. Excuse me, check that back, because that's just changed as well. And Frederick de Vries, because Francois Fabry is in a Bugatti Type 44. So that's a change on the last lap. Yes, Frederick de Vries has gone through and having a cracking battle with Francois Fabry. They're swapping backwards and forwards, waiting for the 20 and the 86 to come across the line and see who's won that. There goes Klaus Dold, Fritz Burkhardt. That's the two best Alphas. So they are 6th and 7th. Then Fabry in the Bugatti, and then De Vries in the Alfa Romeo. The Robert Blackmore Speed Aston Martin is in 10th. That's the 31 car. Let's pick up some winners. Stuart Morley in the Bentley Blower 1930 will win his class in 18th position in the number 17 car. Sébastien Benoit Latour will win in OS3 in the 36 Type 44 Bugatti. Our two leaders from further down, OS5 in the TSRC 3 class, Philippe Bollot and Pierre-Etienne Lambert do win their classes in the 76 Morgan and the 71 HRG. Now, that means that's a different Morgan, because it was Simon King who was leading going on for the last lap. So Philippe Bollot has taken that on the last lap, because it was 71 and 70. And then down to our final class winner, Jean-Luc Lafay, in the Amiel car, who will be classified in 67th position. Cracking first way as we got underway in the first of our plateau races with the traditional start, albeit a little bit of theatre, because the cars were then re-gridded for a run to the line. So this was effectively a chance for the cameras to get some brilliant images.
But Alex Ames roared off the line into the lead. Soon we had cars in the kitty litter, including the little Austin 7 there. We had the real start, and there is, in the bright green helmet, Ames powering away, and the Burnett Talbot slotting through into second place. Otten, who finished third overall last year, into third place in the BMW, and then the rest of the field behind, making a great spectacle of pre-war racing cars. But there was the retirement of the famous Mille Miglia winning Alfa Romeo.
That was the first lap coming out of Turk Rouge.
It was. We saw a puff of smoke,
and that was it.
And that was
His hand was up straight away. He must have felt it sort of tightening up.
I mean, he had some very spirited driving for the leading two. Round Arnage and down the straight.
Great battles all the way through.
Rileys, Singers, Bugattis. All kinds of different machinery. There's a Riley, hands in the air.
That was coming into the pit lane. And at the front of the field, however, the number 2, Talbot AV of 105.
Yeah, Gareth Burnett at the wheel in the white crash helmet. And just see how he worked at the wheel. Bugattis and Alfa Romeos.
through to the line to win on the road. And the checkered flag, however, a 1-minute penalty relegates the number 2 Talbot to 3rd. Not even the best Talbot, didn't even win its class. So it was a win ultimately for the BMW of Albert Otten and the 328 Roadster, with the best of the Talbots, JJ. And it was the number 54, not in this case the house with the bamboo door, but the BMW with the big trophy. Well, actually not, because of course this is
it's a third. We're a third of the way through. The very nice trophies, actually, I saw for the support events, and I'm sure they'll be good here as well.
So what we're talking about, effectively, in Le Mans 24 hours parlance, they're 8 hours in to the race right now. They've got another 16 hours to go, which equates in our world to 2 more 43-minute races. Albert Otten, who drove solo, takes the win in the first plateau, which is named the Privateers, and class winners right through the field. Surprised to see that Rob Kaufman didn't come further through the field. Only 8th in OS7 and 14th overall.
Just seeing in 23rd place at Xavier Pompidou, who used to race regularly in the main event here a long time ago.
And Guy Smith was out there as well, wasn't he? In the in the number 40 car. I saw the Bentley overalls that were in the pit lane, and I thought that was Guy's stature. So there is our first race of the weekend in terms of the plateau races. As we've pointed out before, it's a third of the way through, and the positions and times are aggregated to tomorrow afternoon, and that's when it all starts to become a bit more obvious. We're going to take a 1-hour break for light refreshment for the teams, drivers and the commentary team. Don't go too far away from your device, either on radio or on the World Feed TV stream. Some contemporary cars going out to give some fast laps. And check your watches now for 1 hour for the break, and we'll be back with you then. So for the moment, from Peter Snowden, Andrew Marriott and me, John Hindhaugh, it's good afternoon, or should I say good evening, from Le Mans. Join us in an hour's time. Bye-bye.
À 300 000, on adjure.